Yo, what's up guys? More for tier list January, the global LD5 tier list, including where I recommend to use them, how to use them, and how to build them. There are 122 images in this one, which does also mean we have 122 LD5s. However, the free-to-play LD5s such as the Veramos, the Altair, blah blah blah, Jean, all of those are included as well, so -5. So if you pull an LD5 to get your specific LD5 is like 1 in 115 nowadays. That is difficult to get the right one, but if you do happen to pull one, this is going to be the list where I do explain where I would recommend you to use them. I'm going to be once again ranking them by early game, but I'm not going to value early game that much because LDs in the early game, you can do the early game with any other units as well. So it's mainly going to be these 4 criteria that I'm going to be high ranking this unit or not. I will also take a quick peek at the tier list of last year. So last year in 2014, we did see the Nikki being super high up, Neftis, Tian Lang. All the way at the bottom, we see the Lydia, the Maya, and the Ariana. Probably they are still going to be kind of there. But yeah, they added in a whole bunch of new units. Everything that is below the list of, I think, the Twin Angels. Where are the Twin Angels at? Yeah, Twin Angels is all new. So a decent amount of them are added new. We're going to place all of them, and that's just simply the way it is. Once again, tier list is based on my opinion. If you haven't seen any of my tier list videos, I like to do like the 195 blah, 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 that kind of tier instead of like the triple S, double S. And that is mainly because it gives me more flexibility of putting a number in between, whereas a double S and a half doesn't really make too much sense. For these tier lists, most of the time I don't really use that, but for the RTA tier list, I do tend to use it. Also, these tier lists do take a lot of time and effort to make, especially with writing all of the timestamps that if you want to look for your specific unit rather than watching this whole thing. Look it up by the timestamp, it's definitely a lot easier, but because it takes a lot of time to make, I highly appreciate it if you just smack that like button. That's all I ask for you. It is for free. So let's get on with the tier list. First of all, we have Sean, and Sean is actually one of those units. It is just an RTA unit. You could use this siege offense, but I don't really think it is that much. But in RTA, he's also kind of struggling finding his spot, like how good is he actually at the moment. You need really good rune investment to make him work. He is not really worth that often on Vio because he has that low of base speed. So he needs a Vio set that's incredibly fast while you don't need the crit rate on it, but you need the high crit damage on it. So most of the time you go like what's speed crit damage HP or speed crit damage attack. I think HP has more value because the scaling comes from speed. But the big issue is like, yeah, he often doesn't really fit. Plus he was really fitting in the sense of a meta with AoE CC and AoE strips in the first place. And the AoE strips in the first place don't perform that well in RTA at the moment. Once again, if you would invest good runes into it, it would still do decent. But I think he kind of lost his shine in that. So I'm going to put Sean at a 70 for that reason. However, Zeratul is actually boosted a lot because Zeratul also got very good for siege defense. It's very common for siege defense. I think in RTA, especially on the build of speed, crit rate, HP, or speed crit rate attack, and then next to a good pair with a Water Twin Angels or a Vanessa or something along those lines, I think Zeratul does very good, and he has the cycling right now, which gives him extra HP, so he's definitely really hard to deal with in RTA. If you put good runes in him, he's definitely one of those units that does need the good runes. Without good runes, he's not going to shine as much, but if you put the good runes to him, I think Zeratul is definitely a really strong one. Plus, in siege defense, we commonly see it with like a Terranese and a Water Twin Angels or something along those lines. Zeratul can be pretty annoying. Sure, Kinky does hard counter it, but Kinky being nerfed does make it a little bit harder to counter this unit in the first place. So, definitely a good unit right now. Zeratul 90. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he's that good in RTA right now that he would perform a 90. Sure, PvE in early game doesn't do anything, but yeah, then again, doesn't really matter. Han is just an RTA unit. Siege offense. I have seen some people kind of try him in siege offense, but it is not the craziest one out there for that. Han is definitely one of those. I do have to mention that for Han, that Han is highly elevated by you having other LD5s, mainly dark 5s. Like if you get the Gianna, if you get the Wunsa, if you get the Mugwul, if you get like any of those speedy units that do really help you out, Han becomes very interesting. Without that, Han is not as interesting. So I think Han on a 90 feels fair. Most of the time built on speed crit damage, HP, speed crit damage attack. You could go for the crit rate. There's a lot of options for him out there. But he's definitely a very nice pair and probably still best single target damage dealer in game. But the speed lead makes it very interesting if you already have more dark units or if you're pulling more dark units after him. It is always Fire Will. That's the main thing. It's always Fire Will. But I'm going to give him 90 because he's not really that much of a defense unit. It's just RTA unit. And he does good in it, but for the requirements of also having to have the other units, he is lowered a little bit in that value. But he's still an insane pool to pick up right there. Because even just the combination of, let's say you go for the draft of the Zibala, Sierra, Dark Robo, and the Han, you're already really solid on your draft right there. Moving on next, Achroma. Achroma for arena defense, I think, is a little bit bad. But Achroma is definitely one of those units that I personally like a lot. I picked it up last year. Prior to the buff, it was an okay unit. You had a few counter things that, especially into the Layla Tomoe Heigan comp, which is a little bit figured out by most people. She was doing exceptionally well. But then she was countering something that was already relatively easy to counter. But there's still a bunch of comps where she does good. Big issue is where she kind of dies to additional damage artifacts. The build on her is you want as much stats as possible, but don't go for Revenge, don't go for Nemesis, just go Blade or Focus or Energy, whatever you get most stats in. If you farm a lot of Giants, you probably have one of those sets on like a super high efficient thing, and that's what you want to go for because you want to add a lot of damage. You want to have that 100 crit rate, crit damage on the 4, HP on the 6, and just as much stats as possible. And her silent cycling is pretty nice. She has the S2 that is on a low cooldown, so you do want to have some accuracy on the S2 as well. Of course, violent, and you want her to be decently speedy as well. So she needs a lot and a lot of stats, but I think she's exceptionally good in RTA. Siege offense, she is often a free win in siege offense as well because of the moment you hit a Duman or you hit anything else, like she's probably the best light tank there is in the game at the moment. Especially if there's any like debuffed related dark unit on the enemy side, then she's like, yeah, I'll eat that for breakfast. Just build her full on tank and then have the other 2 units clean that up. Arena defense, I think it's a little bit worse. And the main reason for arena defense it's worse is because her lead, HP lead, just doesn't really cut it. Like in high ranks, you always want to go for speed lead. But still, I would give Achroma 90. She's absolutely really good because of her buff right now. She's also more usable in the sense where you don't have to super hard counter the enemy. But just if they don't crit, your Achroma already does cycle. But I would have to say, from all of the units, like the 3 units over here, probably Achroma has the highest rune requirements needed to actually shine. Whereas sure, these 2 on the better runes, they will do better. But Achroma needs like pretty insane runes because you also need her to survive while still doing damage, while still being fast enough, while also having the S2 accuracy in there. So there's a lot of it that goes into it, and therefore definitely go for Violent, plus whatever set that gives you the most amount of stats. But I'm liking my Achroma. Achroma is actually, for me, where I have like Gianna, Neftis, blah, 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 bunch of those, my most used LD5 in RTA. So I'm definitely high valuing her. Then we have Trinity. I think you can make some niche arena offenses with Trinity because Trinity in the end is still the best damage dealer for arena offense. It is better than a Samath in just clean damage, that is for sure. In RTA, there are some cleaves here and there, but then it's mostly related on you having multiple LDs to actually get that cleave in. But yeah, also a damage dealer for 33 arena most of the time. She just needs a tech, that tech type. That's all she needs. When she gets a tech type, she's good. Until that time, she's not that great. Way to build her is probably just full on damage. That's the only thing she kind of does. Building her tanky makes no sense, so... yeah, I think just something like a 60 is fair for her. Wait, we have to rename it to 50. Next up, let's go for Julian. Julian has been nerfed a few times. We don't see it as much in siege defense anymore, but it is still usable in siege defense. The teams that you did tend to see it in was like a Chandra plus like an armor breaker, and then Julian or Nana Julian, something like with a strip or something like that. There were a few options, but it is a little bit easier to deal with, especially now with the Molong and a Zenitsu combination where you can just cleanly take it out. However, it is still okay-ish on siege defense in lower ranks, I would say. But in RTA, it is absolutely one of the best units in RTA. Now, I'm actually going to lower him down because it's just an RTA unit. It is insane for RTA, though. He's really, really insane for RTA. And mostly paired with either a Vanessa or paired with a Twin Angel. That is the most common teams. And then whatever is next to it is just counter picks on the enemy. You definitely want to go for speed, crit damage, attack. You want to aim for as much attack and speed as possible and crit damage. HP and defense you can let a little bit lower, but you still have to be careful that you're not too easy to get cleared out. Fun fact about Julian, a lot of people stack like more HP than defense on him, but the more defense he has, the less HP he will drain from his side allies, so the longer you actually survive. So defense is actually an underrated stat on the Julian, whereas his base defense is pretty low. But if you have some lines with like flat defense in there, it's definitely really nice. And in most cases, you want to go violent in them, because the moment that they hit them, he gets the extra turns. It's just super nice that way. So 90 for Julian for that sake, but it's mainly an RTA unit. But he's insane in RTA, whereas the other three you can kind of use elsewhere. Julian you can only use in RTA, but it's still as good as the other three, because RTA-wise, Julian is better than the other three, for sure. Cadiz, and Cadiz actually is low-key not that bad at the moment, and there's two reasons for it. In dungeons, he is an absolute best in slot for a dungeon that's currently the most annoying dungeon to farm in the game, which is Steel Fortress. No matter how many buff blockers you put in Steel Fortress, you could still fail, whereas Cadiz is by far the best option to make it as safe as possible. So he definitely gets high value for me for that. Because in the end, like, sure, a lot of LDs end up in the storage. You're not really going to do shit with them, like a Sean or a Trinity. If you don't really want to build a team on them, you're not actually going to use them. But Cadiz actually is usable in that. And that is, actually, I'm going to give him a decent amount of value for that. Plus, you can use that in R5 as well. Plus, recently an arena defense, this one, has been popping up, which is actually legit strong. And hear me out on that one. That is a Water Twin Angels, Ren, and Cadiz. And you can build it in multiple different ways. You can make Ren fast, you can make Ren on damage, you can make the Twin Angel fast, you can make the Twin Angel on damage, you can even build Cadiz fast, you can build Cadiz on damage. And it's just an overall pretty strong defense. So if you have these three units, recommend to try that out. So I would say it's definitely a very strong siege defense. It is exceptionally good in the two dungeons that he does, and he's definitely a best in slot. It's definitely not a unit that should end up in storage, never being used. You're in RTA, it is probably not really the thing for you. It's probably not really something that's too crazy. But Cadiz, it's definitely, if you pull it and you care a lot about RTA, you're really like, oh, why are you not Julian? But it's definitely one of those units that I would say is kind of underrated, because he has a lot more usability, whereas there's a lot more units that are going to be down the list here that are just going to end up in storage and you're never actually going to use. Whereas Cadiz, if you don't use your Cadiz, at least somewhere, you're doing it wrong. So I'm going to give an 80 to Cadiz. For the PvE stage, of course, you just want to go as much as accuracy you need. Probably it's like 35. And then just go full on damage, a little bit survivability. In the siege defense team that I mentioned, you mostly just want to go... You could go Revenge, you could go Vio Revenge, Vio Nem, Vio Damage, whatever. If you want to use it in RTA, it's low-key not that bad for RTA. Sure, it's not the best, but it's also not incredibly bad. Like, I've seen this thing being placed against the Masha before, and then you land the buff block on the Masha, and it's like, oh, you always normally have immunity. No, you don't. So, low-key for RTA, sure, I'm not going to classify it as good in, like, G3, whatever RTA, but in the lower ranks of RTA, it can definitely, like, surprise a enemy that Cadiz can actually do a decent amount if you invest good runes to him. So, Cadiz, probably a lot of Cadiz owners are not going to agree with me on that one, but I'm going to place Cadiz at 80 for that reason. Then we have Zerath. God tier in Giants and God tier in PC. The other dungeons not as great. Also God tier in Arena Offense still. I would say also inter-server defense. It is still pretty God tier. RTA, you need a very specific comp around it. There's one player, Dustin, best Zerath player out there pretty much. But he has his whole comp really revolved around the Zerath with an insane freaking Zerath. But he plays on that very well. So I would say since the versatility of Zerath is definitely pretty high, I would say I place him high. I'm actually going to place him 90 because in the end, sure, he's the best in slot for Giants and for... Or he's the best in slot, yeah, for Giants and for PC mainly. However, you can do that with free-to-play unit as well. Sure, it's going to be a little bit slower, but in the end, we don't have infinite crystals. So it is kind of on the point, like, yeah, it's really insane, but do you actually need to be that insanely fast? Because it's just going to burn you a shit ton of crystals. But his versatility is definitely out there. For defense, mainly for arena defense, actually siege offense, I could see him being used as well because he just needs an armor breaker. Let's say that we go for a guaranteed armor breaker such as a Truffle or something, Tiana Zerath. I can definitely see that being used in siege offense. Or if you have a Neftis, definitely something for siege offense right there. Arena offense, same thing. No, I'm actually gonna up him one, like, because he's usable legit everywhere. Yeah, that's most of the time you just want to build him like super high damage, and that's just the main thing is to it. And you want to make sure that he's in the right tuning. And most of the time it's a rage set, but you could also be looking at like Swift or just a bunch of energy sets if you have those. Definitely a lot of options out there. For arena defense, what you tend to see is that you want to have an armor breaker AoE moving in front. If you don't have an armor breaker AoE in front, then your Zerath is not going to do as much damage. But if you do have that, could be a Nephthys, could be a Vanessa, well, Vanessa's not AoE. Could be a Savannah, that's AoE. Could be a Nana, that's AoE. So there's a bunch of options that you could have, like a Deathbreaker moving in front of this thing. And in Inter-Server battle, that's mostly the thing that's rocking up most wins. So Zerath gets a 95 for me for that one. Then we have Grogan. Grogan recently being buffed that if he kills something on the skill 3, he also takes another turn and gives you a chance to go for skill 2. When I saw the buff, I was like, whatever. But in the end, he's actually exceptionally good for arena offense, and for siege offense, he's still pretty darn good as well. So I'm gonna put Grogan on the 75. You cannot really use him in like PvE. In RTA, would definitely not use him. He does have a little bit of uniqueness, but in the end, you could have used a Zyros as well. That was mainly his issue the moment that Zyros was buffed. Grogan was like, oh yeah, now I suck again. And then they buffed Grogan for that reason. I do like Grogan more than Zyros in most cases. He does less damage on the S3, but he has the S3, S2 combination. But you need really insane fucking runes to make sure that on a death break, you just kill already. And if you go with Galleon, yeah, you know the Galleon issue. So it's easy to death break with like a Truffle or a Dark Tanjiro, or in my case, a Nephthys, rather than going for a Galleon. With Galleon, he would definitely kill on that skill 3, but then he also doesn't really need that skill 2 anymore. So just in most cases, as high as possible damage on this unit. If you don't go for your best runes on your Grogan, he's most likely not going to kill, and you need that kill to get anywhere. Then for Eludia. Eludia is definitely a niche unit for arena offense, siege offense, but it is by odds. RTA, I've seen some that would work as well. I think I give Eludia credits for giving a lot of creativity and uniqueness, because it's the only unit that strips attack bar boost and armor break. Those are 3 roles in one unit, which definitely gives you a lot of freedom to just build a whole bunch of siege or arena offenses or siege offenses, which you normally wouldn't really have had. Plus, the damage on this thing is pretty insane. Best paired is still a Lucifer, so Lucifer, Leo, Eludia +1. And then the +1 doesn't even have to move, because these 2 pretty much already kill something. Issue is, however, Lucifer is a little bit out of meta, because a lot of people have been rocking like double or triple shield sets on their team, which makes the Leo very hard to hit the 5k, and therefore the Lucifer doesn't move. But since you can build Eludia on Swift, a fast set, she can still boost up that team. So with a Leo team, I think Leo, if you want to go for a strip armor breaker after a Leo, Eludia is by far the best option. So let's say you go for a Leo, Eludia, Zerath, plus either a speed lead or something else that makes it even move faster. I think just a speed lead would be fine. That would be absolutely insane. But she does have a little bit of the value where you would say, like, okay, you need more LDs to actually make it super shine. But it definitely has the uniqueness in the kit on that skill 3. So I definitely do like that unit for that reason. Jara, it's niche for siege offense, arena offense, and RTA, but I would still classify it as niche everywhere. It is okay in R5/dungeons, but I feel like that Jara should get like a unique passive that if Jara hits an NPC, so not a defense of anyone else, it should guarantee land the branding and the armor break. Then Jara would be a best-in slot for a lot of shit. But the big issue is that Jara gets outshined by fucking Prillia and being consistent for an armor break, which is just dumb. So Jara, I'm gonna get 70 for that reason. It's a little bit usable. No, I'm actually gonna give 75 because it is usable everywhere. But it is everywhere just kind of on the edge of like, yeah, do you actually want to go for it? Because landing the things are still by chance. However, if she does land her shit, she does do an insane amount of damage and she has very good debuffs. Next up, Artemil. I think Artemil's siege offense is still incredibly good. Arena offense, if you go for a auto offense with a Fengyang, Alaya, Artemil plus whatever, like sustain unit or something like that. Yeah, that is insanely good. Or just, no, wait, Fengyang, Leo, Alaya, and then Artemil, so those are 4 already. I think that's probably one of the fastest clears on like an auto team. For Arena, it's definitely really strong. Artemil, in most cases, I think Artemil for RTA is often pulled really badly. I want to give credits to the Artemil of Raxus. High in speed, high in HP, high in defense, crit damage on the 4. Do not give a shit about resistance, because it's better. Like, anything that wants to land is probably like 85 accuracy anyways. So it's more important that you can cycle out of a turn, or like out of a stun, or out of debuffs, rather than being like, okay, I got stunned and I'm 15 speed right now and I'm never gonna take a turn in my life. So I think Artemil for RTA is kind of underrated. However, I must give credits to the Wind Monkey being buffed right now, and the Wind Monkey is kind of doing something that you would like to see the Artemil do, which is on counter stunning all the time, which now the Wind Monkey actually does that a lot better than the Artemil. So that is also kind of the thing by the Artemil. You'd kind of want it to Despair most of the time. So builds for it, Despair and Seal is, I would say, best set, but otherwise Despair and Will is totally fine. But RTA-wise, I think it's underrated. I think it's a good 5th pick. Even if you don't have the runes for it to make it speedy, you could still make it very slow and make it a Leo counter or something like that. Arena offense, defense, you're not going to see it, but Siege offense, it's still pretty common with a, let's say, Feng Yang and a, let's say, a Alaya or a Valaju or something like that. So Artemil is definitely not that bad. Fermion. The only place I've seen Fermion is Siege offense. It is pretty much the same team as that I just mentioned. Alaya, Feng Yang, Fermion is pretty much a free win. Very good for the Bruiser, but it's just that. I've seen some on Siege defense as well, where on Siege defense it was a Sylvia-based defense. So Sylvia Fermion does have a little bit of options right there. I've seen some in RTA, but most of the time you can kind of ignore it, or you kind of have to go for the whole draft with like a Gap Doll and those kind of annoying units. So I think Fermion is definitely not the worst, but he's also not the best. He's definitely one of those that he needs to land his provokes to get anywhere, otherwise he's just not really cutting it. But he has a bit of usability everywhere, so I classify Fermion as not that bad. Then we move on next to Lima Oracles. Where would I like to place Lima? For current state in RTA, she's not that great. There's too many things with good strips that just deny her too much. She's not really worth the good set anymore. She's kind of like the same thing as I said yesterday on Praha. She's okay-ish if you give really good runes to it, but she's mostly not really worth those really good runes. So for that reason, that's Arena offense, defense, Siege offense, defense. You're not going to see her neither that much as well. Sure, you could go for some kind of thing, but most of the time, not really. TOA, I do tend to use it as giving the invisibility, but then again, other units could have done that too. You could have done that with Ashan. It's probably even better. So, yeah, she has a little bit of everywhere, but she's not really shining anywhere that great, which is also the odd thing that throughout last year, the Oracle got buffed, but the Oracle that got buffed was Gianna, which was already good. So that's... Lima's by far, I would say, the worst of the Oracles right now. I'm actually going to give that a 65, because I feel like, yes, you can use her, but she's never really something like, oh, she actually does fit well in this slot. So, yeah, might as well just give those runes to a Pra. It's probably going to do better. Gianna, however. Gianna is insane good for RTA. Buffed in RTA, also therefore nerfed in RTA because she was being that insanely good. I would say Siege offense, Arena offense. I've seen some people used in Siege offense, but I'm not the biggest of fans. And the main reason is Gianna can still derp on the strip, can derp on the bomb. You're really looking at, like, by best, a 90% win rate on that team by just Gianna being a derpy unit. So I wouldn't really recommend to use that anywhere else than RTA. But for RTA, insanely good. Build on her either Swift or Vio. You don't want to go for crit rate anymore, but you would just want to go high HP. I've seen some people that go high bomb damage on her, but I wouldn't really recommend that all too much. For Lima, I would also say for the build, you can go for the double Revenge Will, which is sometimes a little bit niche, but it's also not super great. Might as well just give that to a Vert. And you could go Vio Will on that as well. So there's a few options for that. Then we go for Laura, and Laura goes straight to the 100. Laura last year around was not in the 100, but the reason why Laura is in the 100, I would say that currently best in slot for Arena defense is Laura. And she's that by a long shot, because best in slot for the spot is either a Triton or a Laura, and Laura does do that a lot better. Sure, you have to have a unit that follows up pretty close to the Laura, which is a little bit harder to build, so therefore you mostly want to go for a high base speed unit itself. But there's a few options out there, such as a Ren, such as a Zhongshang Lao, or whatever other fast base speed unit there is that could provide some AoE CC. But Laura for arena defense is insanely good. For siege defense, it's really good. For siege offense, it's usable. For arena offense, it's also usable. Because you can use it as siege offense next to a Siri, and then the water Siri, or you use it next to a Sonya. Same for arena offense. It is definitely, like, it's usable everywhere. And I actually did this for Sonya yesterday. And I am going to do this for Laura today as well. I am going to place her on the 101 because I do kind of already have a feeling what I want to place in the 100. And I am pretty certain that Laura is still better than all of that because of the versatility, where she's insane good in RTA. She's insane good in arena defense. She's insane good, or decent to insane in siege defense. She's usable in siege offense. She's usable in arena offense. That's just insane. That's a really loaded kit. So she deserves the 101 from me for that. Most builds for her is either for RTA, I would say Vio builds. Thing that you have to keep in mind, there's a lot of people that go like a 300 or like plus 200 speed on Vio on Laura. Cool, but if you don't have units following up after that, there's no reason to go plus 200 speed on Laura. Go for just a casual like plus 180 or plus 170, and then have your other units at like like the 280s in total or 290s in total move very close to it. That is a lot more value than you smacking in a 200 speed unit or like 200 speed on it. The Laura gets like 320 speed, cool and all, but then the Laura moves, and then afterward your team doesn't move, enemy team moves, you still lose. So that is something you have to keep in mind for RTA. For arena defense, siege defense, most of the time you want to go Swift, but you could go for Vio, mostly in the case of siege defense. And for offense, you most likely just want to go Swift. And then high damage by additional damage for defense, speed, and HP. Nikki, however, Nikki was recently, or like pretty much half a year ago, nerfed to the sense where Nikki got a lot worse for being a nuker. Before, she could be built as a nuker, high crit rate, high crit damage. She gets attack buff for herself, and then she performs a pretty big nuke on an armor break. And then it was also more of the meta where a lot of AoE armor breakers were good, such as Nana, Maximilian, Nefties, those kind of things she was often paired with. She was really good in that. Sure, she still has the cycling. Sure, she still has the skill too. So she's still, I would say, pretty good in RTA, but she's more of a niche pick, bruiser pick, rather than saying like a spam pick. Arena offense wouldn't use that. You could technically go for like a Leo, Nikki, Dominic, and then make everything slow and like high damage, 100 resistance, that kind of stuff. It is possible, but wouldn't really recommend it. Arena defense tried it, but it's not recommended as well. Siege defense, I don't think it's that recommended as well. Siege offense, there are a few options, but in most cases, just something more safe like a Briley does better. So I would say she just has the value of RTA, but she has the value of RTA where she's more niche than a spam pick, where I would say the 5 units that you see over here are a lot more spam pickable than a Nikki is in current state. And it's just mainly, she had 5 hits on her skill 3, now she has 4 hits on her skill 3. And that just lowers her damage output by a lot, where she just becomes more of a support rather than a damage dealer, which does actually kind of make sense for her kit. Because if her whole kit also says, like, I'm also the damage dealer, that was pretty busted. And she, I think last year she was on like a 95, but that nerf definitely gave her like an 85 or something like that, I would say. Moving on next, Asima, which is, I would say, if you have a beginner account, one of the best early game clearers there is, if not the best. Arena offense, it is still really good because it does have the triple hit armor break, which is arguably one of the top 3 best death breakers in game. Dark Tanjiro kind of overtook her by being a double hit and a higher chance of landing that armor break. But Asima itself does have an insane amount of damage. So if you go for a team, let's say a Adriana, Tiana, Asima, and a Zyrus, it is nice. It is nice. Sure, you cannot outspeed everything with that, but those are definitely options out there. You could also go for a Asima after like a 33 leads Triton, and then from there you do like another damage dealer with that. So Asima by itself has a decent amount of damage, even on 15 crit rate. If you go in with the high additional damage artifacts, it is still a nice way to actually put in a lot of damage on that unit. Oh, also I forgot the build for Nikki. Nikki, the build, I would say, I would go for a 100 res, high HP, little bit of attack, and then additional damage as well. So I wouldn't go high attack or high crit rate, high crit damage on the Nikki anymore. Just make it like a high resistance bruiser unit with high HP that she's hard to kill. Because a lot of people do tend to focus her first because that girl spray is still pretty strong. But back to the Asima. I would say just if you want to hit Camillas for siege off or for arena offense, I would say that you would have to go for a 15 crit rate. Otherwise, it is just good to go like decent damage on everything. But her additional damage artifacts is already enough damage that you don't have to go crit rate, crit damage on her, in my opinion. Most cases, either Swift or Despair is the way to go. If you want to go for a more setup build, you could also go triple fight on it. But I think Asima's pretty versatile, where she's that good early game. I would say for dungeons itself, well, it's usable in PC, but that's about it. Siege offense, I can definitely see this being used as armor breaker. Let's say you go for Tiana, Asima plus some other damage dealer. You can also use it in a dot team, so for that reason, it's also there. I do think that Rika probably performs better in a dot team, but I'm not sure, because the issue is she does crit on Camillas in the dot team, but arena offense with the dot team, I think she definitely can be used there as well. And RTA, I would say Rika's probably better because of the slow, but I can see her being used as well. So she is usable in a lot of places, so I'm going to give her a 90 for that. However, on defense, not going to be used over there. Kraka is actually used on defense. Most of the time, she's just, if there's anything like 2 units plus LD, and the LD can be anything different, Kraka is one of those units that can shine up in that LD. Currently, we're looking at like Fire Bikes, Terranes, and then Kraka. It's an option, it's double revive. It's a little bit annoying, it's hard to insta-cleave, but yeah, that defense, RTA, a little bit of usage over there as well, but it's always like, she's kind of there, but also not really there. She does have a good skill too with the Shatter, but she's just kind of living the spot where she's like, her skill 3 just doesn't do enough, so I think she's usable, she's just not that great, so I'm gonna give Kraka 70 for that reason. Most of the time, I would say Despair or Fio is probably her best build. And then we go for Jaeger, the favorite unit of Mr. Scribblebibble, or not really. I would say Jaeger is just an RTA unit. I could see it being used in siege offense if there is a team where you don't want to get stunned by, let's say, a Celia or something like that. He is easy to stack out his passive. However, the Fire Monkey is just doing everything better than the Jaeger. That's just the main thing. I think his threat state should be on a higher chance. Like he needs to counter to do a threat state, and then if that is on a higher chance, it helps out a lot more. But yeah, if that's not the case, then Jaeger's not gonna do as well. So I'm gonna put Jaeger on the 65. Like, it's one of those units, you build a whole team around him, he's definitely not that bad, but most of the time he's kind of like, yeah, is it doing enough? If he had more threat states, more, counters on it, would be nicer. Build for him is most likely low attack, high crit damage, high HP, and I would say Vampire or Vio. Ragdoll, however, Ragdoll goes straight to the hundreds, and the reason for Ragdoll going straight to the 100 is he is absolutely insane in RTA. Siege offense, he's usable. Well, it's actually not as much used in siege offense anymore, but yeah, I would say his usability in RTA is just absolutely insane. I would also give him some credit where you can actually put a Ragdoll on arena defense. I haven't seen it too much, but there are definitely options where you would say, like, okay, Ragdoll on arena defense could actually be legit pretty annoying. And that is just like, if you have some kind of support role that could give, because the enemy in most cases is going to be critting, it is arena. So you definitely have that going on, where I would say Ragdoll is definitely insane. Plus RTA, he's really one of those units that shines in every rank in RTA, whereas some of these units, you do have to have good runes to it, you have to have well-invested stuff into it to actually make it work. Whereas a Ragdoll is a lot easier to pick up in early game PvP rather than some of these units are more of like late game runes being good. So I give Ragdoll a little bit more credit for that than that. Yeah, do I? Yeah, I actually do. Because maybe I'm biased against Ragdolls. I think Ragdoll's just one of the easiest things to play, because Ragdoll plus a bunch of counter picks is already a good draft. Might you ask, like, what's a good draft with Ragdoll? Ragdoll fits in every draft, as long as you just have the other units kind of counter picking the enemy. That's all. So yeah, Ragdoll gets a 95. However, there are some Ragdolls that go very high on the HP and that go very high anti-cleave kind of stuff. Personally, I don't really like those. Sure, it's like against the cleaves, you're gonna be good. But against everyone that just kind of bruises you, you deal no damage. So I'd rather have an attack crit damage attack Ragdoll with a decent amount of speed that Ragdoll can actually be damaged. Like if you say like, oh, but Ragdoll just stands there, it's just a passive. Then you ruined your Ragdoll wrong, because Ragdoll skill 1, skill 2 actually can do a lot of damage, but you have to invest like a decent amount of damage to it. You always want to go Vio Will, however, though. Moving on next, monkeys. Light Monkey definitely kind of lost his spot in being good in RTA because of the meta not really fitting his favor. Sure, it's still one of the better 5th picks. He's relatively easy to rune because he can be on the same speed as other units while you just invest like a secondary or even 3rd, 4th, or 5th Vaio set on it because he has the high base speed. He is still definitely a thing you want to keep runed up, that if he fits in slot, he's probably banned as well, because otherwise he would just take over the whole battlefield. But the big issue is that it's often not really his spot to shine where he's actually good. I do see some people also use him in siege offense. It's kind of okay for that. For TOA stuff, I think you can use him as well. He's good for CCing and stuff. So he's a little bit used in multiple spots, but he's not really like a crazy best in slot in there. But it's definitely still a unit I would say is not too bad to have ruined up, because he's just simple to have ruined up. Whereas, for example, Shan, you need to actually invest like good runes to Shan. And this thing, just a little bit of leftover runes, and he will do his job anyways. Songcheng Lao. Songcheng Lao we do see sometimes on siege defense, arena defense as well next to a Triton or something. RTA you see it a little bit, but it's not really that crazy good. TOA you can also use it. So it's a little bit everywhere, but it's not doing any of those jobs really good. But since he has a bit of versatility and usability everywhere, do gotta give him some credit, but I'm gonna take him on a 75 for that reason, because yeah, I would say a Ren nowadays in a lot of those spots would kind of do similar or same or maybe even better because it's more anti-illusion. Then we go into Shazam, and I think Shazam is just siege defense, but he's not really good at siege defense. Siege offense, I could see him being used. There's definitely some creative siege offense where the counter on the whole team is pretty nice. Also, I keep forgetting bots. Monkey builds, I would say Vaio Will and then high accuracy. This one, either Vaio crit rate, HP, or Swift, and then high stats, and then just high accuracy as well. Those are mainly the main builds for these two monkeys. Songcheng Lao could be fastest in the team. This one has to move after AoE strips, of course. For the Shazam, yeah, it's mainly about his AoE counter buff that he provides, which is pretty nice. His skill 1 is pretty loaded as well with the armor break. It's not the greatest out there, but there's definitely some options for him there. So I would say mainly a siege unit, and just a siege unit wouldn't place him anywhere in RTA. Most common build is probably Vaio, speed, crit damage, HP, or speed, HP. And I would say Vaio will. Then we have Rahul, and I would say Rahul is probably one of the worst units out there. You can use him in some niche siege offenses, but he's probably not even gonna perform that well in there. So I'm gonna put Rahul at a 50. I think Rahul is actually... No, I think there's units worse than Rahul, but Rahul is kind of on the spot. Like, if you want to use him, he's probably not that great. He's just not gonna do enough there. There's not too much play to him where he would actually provide anything that not another unit could have simply done. If you want to build it, mostly Despair or Vaio or something like that. But 55 for Rahul. Then we have Yan Hong, which is actually a unit you do tend to see on Arena Defense. And Arena Defense, it's a Swift Yan Hong paired with a high damage, slow Vaio Rakan, which is definitely a nice option next to, let's say, a Vanessa and then a +1. So I definitely do think that that is a decent defense. I've seen the defense actually perform pretty well. Siege offense, I could see some builds working because you can actually still boost up a unit that can nuke after that. So it is a little bit more niche. You have to get a little bit more creative, but their options are there. Plus in RTA, Yan Hong is still incredibly good. In most cases, you do want to build it Swift, but Vaio is also a nice way to build it. Plus she has the scaling of speed on her skill too. So high speed, high crit rate helps out a lot for her. I don't think you need high attack on her. High HP is probably more value because you have the speed scaling anyway. So Yan Hong gets a 90 for me for that. Then we have Wooyoung, which I actually recently pulled. Wooyoung has this mechanic that a lot of people actually do not know, that Wooyoung only gives attack bar increase if after a heal, the unit is at max HP. So if you hit something before she doesn't heal for max HP, she doesn't give the increase of attack bar. She is usable in RTA if you do have multiple LDs, so you need to have a Lucifer and a Ludia, blah, 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 those kind of things. Otherwise, she's probably not going to be your unit for a cleave in RTA. For Arena Offense, which is her main spot, I think that she's still overtaken by an Adriana. Adriana is just simply that good by the speed buff, attack buff, and immunity on high base speed. And that gives you the flexibility of doing something else with the leads position. So you could go for a Chimera, or you could go for a 33 lead, where she has the 28 lead. And the big issue with Wooyoung is Wooyoung doesn't have a proper skill 3. And because of all of that, I'm actually gonna give her a 65. She's definitely not that great. I tried her in a siege or like an arena offense only using her. Yeah, it's just the only team that she's decent to good at is the chilling with the Wooyoung and then a Siri and a Sonya next to it. That team is pretty solid, but she's just there for the S2, which is and the lead, which you might as well just go for a Chimera, Adriana, and then just work your way from there because it's definitely strong and you can use your nukes multiple times. It just works so much better. So yeah, I'm gonna give her a 65. She has some niche scenarios where you could use her, but in most cases, you need to build a whole team around it to make her shine, and then she still doesn't shine that much. So I'm gonna give that a 65 for that reason. Nigong. Nigong is just a siege defense, arena defense, but siege defense is to the point where Nigong is just placed in a siege defense in Tower 1 most of the time. Arena defense, I think there's a lot of better options than a Nigong nowadays as well. So I'm gonna give Nigong a 60. Also for Wooyoung for the build, just Swift. That's Swift plus whatever, because she doesn't deal damage or anything anyways. But Nigong, most builds are Vio, Will, Vio, Nem, Vio, Destroy. In high HP, the S2 can deal a decent amount of Destroy. But Nigong, in most cases, it's not gonna perform that well in arena defense, siege defense, or anything. Sure, it's kind of niche-ish, but Ataranis does a lot of a better job right now at reviving nowadays because of the passive getting the revive back faster and those kind of things. The S2 doing a lot more damage, having a chance to on armor break do like what 30, 40k damage, whereas this thing is always like, oh, like yeah, it's you know how much it's going to hit. So Nigong, I'm just gonna give that a 60 for that reason. Wooyoung, however, Wooyoung is a very much dependent on do you have other LDs or interesting Swift runes to make it work. Otherwise, Wooyoung is not going to be that interesting. Arena offense, siege offense, wouldn't recommend to use that. Arena defense, wouldn't recommend to use it. So it's just an RTA unit. And for just an RTA unit, you need to have the multiple LDs to actually make it work. So you would like to have either a Yeonhong, Sibala combination, or you want to have like a Gianna next to it, or Veronica, or you want to have a Han, or like there's a lot of good pairs with Wunsa. If you don't have those good pairs with Wunsa, Wunsa's not going to do that much. So most of the time you want to build it Swift, but also you have to keep in mind Wunsa's best in the slot 5, which you have to give a very good Swift set to a slot 5 unit, because otherwise they end up with Wunsa counters such as a Moor, such as a triple Nem Robo, or anything that would Nem enough to make it move. So I would say Wunsa is nice, but yes, it needs a lot of pairs to actually be nice. So I'm going to give it a 75. It's definitely not a bad unit, but Wunsa by itself, the only way that I would say Wunsa by itself is good without other LDs is if you go for a Wunsa plus a Ren. I think that that is a pretty nice combination that you could look at. I think more people should actually play that. I'm going to give it one higher for that. But yeah, it's just, it is pretty unique in the way that it is a very fast strip. And it has a lot of options in there. And it's definitely better than a Triton because there's always going to be some fire units. And Triton just simply sucks against those. Whereas the Wunsa skill 2 and skill 3 are, or skill 2 and skill 1 are probably better than Triton, especially against fire. So yeah, I give Wunsa an 80 for that. Most of the time you just want to build it swift, super fast, max accuracy, and you could go high HP for more damage, but that is an option if you want to take it. Then the Ifrits, El Sharian first. I would say siege defense, you see it sometimes next to an Adriana and let's say a Carcano or something. It is an option out there. For RTA, if you invest really good runes to it, it's not that bad as well. But it's definitely one of those units you have to actually invest really good runes to, and then he will shine kind of to okay, but he's not crazy. So I'm going to give that a 70. Most of the time built on Vio, Revenge, Vio, Will, or something along those lines. Most of the damage comes from speed, so focus more on the speed crit damage than anything. Then Veromos, which is actually a very interesting one. I thought about Veromos prior to the list, but Veromos gets a 95 for me. And why is that? Veromos is insane for the early game. Veromos is early game best in slot for Giants. Veromos is early game best in slot for Dragons. Veromos is insane for TOA. Veromos is very usable in siege offense. Defense, you're not going to use it. Veromos is very good in arena offense. And Veromos is good in RTA. Veromos is super all-round. If Veromos was not free to play, we would all be wanting to pull a Veromos. And that is the mindset that a lot of people don't have. It's like, oh, everyone has it, so it's not good. No, actually, if Veromos was not free to play, imagine like you look at the kit and you're like, whoa, that's so loaded. That's in RTA, very good counter pick. It's like 53% win rate in G3 or something like that. Arena offense, it's best in slot, or like top 3 best in slot next to a, or one of the 3 best options next to a Alaya, Feng Yang, and Leo. It is insanely good for siege offense as well if the enemy has some kind of dot, so it's commonly used with like a Juno, Leo, and then a Veramos. And then in dungeons, it does do a good amount of damage on the S2 scaling. Plus, there are arena defenses as well where you do see Veramos because you want to be anti the dot team. And the best options for anti-dot team for accessible units are either a Juno or a Veramos, whereas Veramos provides more CC than a Juno does. So Veramos gets a straight up 95. Like I'm legit contemplating like putting Veramos on the 90 for how good all round he is. But since he's free to play and accessible, I'm gonna give him that. But if Veramos was like something you had to pull, I maybe even put it on 100. Like that's how fucking all round Veramos is. He's fucking insane. So yeah, Veramos gets that. Depending on the build, most of the time it's like Vio Nemesis is pretty common. You can put crit rate on the slot 4 rather than just go speed, HP, because the skill 2 is scaling enemy max HP, so that's good on an armor break. And the skill 1 is scaling for your speed. So both skills are not scaling that well on attack, but they're scaling very well on crit rate. So definitely a lot of options. You could even go just triple Nem on it, but Veramos is definitely a very, very strong unit right there. Eleanor, right? Yeah, or Eleanor. Lipola Queen. I always mix up the two. I would say she's very niche in a very cool, unique mechanic of lowering cooldown, boosting units, so you can use it next to Sonya, boost that again. It's definitely a nice unit next to like the Layla Tomoe Heigen combination. I think she's a very good fit in there in RTA. Arena offense, siege offense, I think I could make something creative, but you have to get pretty creative on the spot where you could also say like, okay, couldn't another unit kind of do it better? Like if you just do another damage dealer in there or something like that. So it is a niche unit that's very good in a lot of places. But is it necessarily like really a best in slot? That's kind of hard to say. But I think Eleanor or like Polar Queen, she does provide a lot of uniqueness in that you could play things different way and is really a playmaker that you can theory craft like cool ideas. And I think she gets some value for that as well. So I'm going to give that an 80. And the most common build is Despair, and then high accuracy, and then high tankiness. She's also easy to build, and the reason that she's easy to build makes her also a lot more usable. Even if you can put like a 5th or 6th Despair set on it, and it's probably right in tune after your AoE strips anyway. So that is definitely a nice way that she's easy to build. But is she always a best to use? Not that much, but I think an 80 is definitely fair for her. Then we go for Lydia, and Lydia goes straight to the 50. That unit is just straight up bad. The only place that she's good is arena defense, and she's bad at that. That's just a simple way. The skill 2 doesn't do enough damage. The skill 3 just doesn't do enough. No. She's relatively easy to buff because the skill 2 can be pretty loaded. Like we have seen it on Tiana and Alicia. The skill 2 is pretty nice. But the skill 3, the passive, is just not a passive that you would like to see on a unit like this. So it's just simply not working. So Lydia, straight up 50 for me. Pantas. Pantas is usable in arena defense. You get the Pantas RNG if you use it in arena defense. That's definitely a thing. I would say that Vanessa nowadays kind of does outshine Pantas, but Pantas can be pretty annoying for a lot of people. Especially if you, but then you would kind of have to pair Pantas with another RNG unit that, because if Pantas RNGs well, you insta-win the match. So let's say you go for a Pantas with a Nyx. They don't land the death break on something. Pantas moves, Pantas cleanses. Pantas is pretty good AI for the cleanse. Pretty annoying in that. So for arena defense, it's nice. For siege offense, I could see some niche mechanics where you could make it work, but it's not really that great. RTA also kind of the spot like you could make it work, but it's often like kind of mid if it actually does really good. So I'm gonna give Pantas an 80. I think he's still usable. You could also make it as a Nem trap. I think he is probably best Nem trap. Yeah, I would give the uniqueness to him to that. I would say he's best Nem trap in game. It is still tricky to work on a Nem trap, but let's say Wunsa moves, triggers the Pantas, Pantas goes for a skill 3, everyone has invis and immunity. GG game. So for that reason, I would give Pantas an 80, definitely a unit you want to keep ruined up. Either double Nem will, or you could go for a Vio Nem or a Vio will. There's a bunch of options on that. Bananaman is one of those units that should kill on his AoE hit, but still doesn't, and then he provides a stupid dot. I would say siege offense is usable. There are some options where I could see him being used, like Gali and Tiana and then Manananam, but then again, is it really that great? Yeah. I would say dungeons and TOA, yeah, usable, but is it that great? Yeah, like he's kind of okayish everywhere, but he's everywhere like kind of So he gets a 70 for that. Most of the time, you just want to build Nuker build, Rage, Swift, Fatal. Could build in Vile, but I don't really recommend it. But damage build, that's the main thing you want to go for. Next up, Sylvia. Siege defense goddess, siege offense goddess. Anywhere else, trash. It's simple as that. But since she's absolutely by uniqueness best in slot for siege defense and siege offense, because she has the 33 lead for siege offense, you can pair that with an Adriana and a Sonya. That's absolutely insane, because your Adriana moves, your Sonya moves, and then Sylvia can lower the cooldowns on those two units. That's just a guaranteed win. Very, like, it's absolutely best in slot for that arena, or for that siege offense. And for siege defense is also best in slot. So if you care about siege, she is definitely up here. If you don't care about siege itself, she's down there. So we're kind of going in the middle for that 85 because she's not good anywhere else. But for siege, she's really, really insane. There's a lot of good pairs with her. I have seen some teams where she actually goes Swift. Like if the rest of the units are not that fast, a Swift Sylvia and that pairs up with a unit next to it that goes for a good skill 1 that can disrupt, it's actually very underrated and it's incredibly strong. So that's something you can give a thought of. Plus, I think her base speed is definitely not that bad as well. Is she like 103 or 104? I think it's actually a pretty decent one. Yeah, 104. So putting Swift on this is definitely very nice. And then so just some additional damage artifacts, something along those lines. Thebae. Thebae is still kind of on the spot where I would say he's slightly underrated, but also slightly not that crazy. Can be used in siege defense into like the typical things if you have 2 units and then rotating LD defenses or like an LD as the 3rd spot. He kind of can fit in there. In RTA, he can kind of fit in some matches, but he does an okayish amount of damage. His passive is decent, but also not crazy good because he has to make the kills. But yeah, or does he need to make the kills, or is it still that he picks up something else? Blah, blah, blah. I will reset when an ally or enemy gets defeated while this skill is on cooldown. So yeah, you need to have this skill. Like this part, while this skill is on cooldown, that is the difficult part. Like if he just always get that A to B increase, he would be like definitely up here. But right now it's still like you could ignore him, insta-kill him, those kind of things. He's okay. He's trying his best, but he's often not really doing like super crazy. But he's definitely no longer like a 55 like he used to be. He's definitely usable, but you have to invest some good runes to him. And then he's good in like some niche scenarios. So most cases you want to just go damage, speed, crit damage, HP on him, high crit rate, and then a Vile build. Wedjat. I'm actually not a big fan of Wedjat. It is still spammable in the first pick in RTA, but most of the times I don't really feel that those teams are performing that well. The buffs he provides are not crazy. The speed, the A to B increase that he provides are not that crazy. Sure, it can be used, but the thing is you have to build your whole team around him to actually make him work. And the nice pair that he has is a Valkyrja next to it. That part is definitely still strong. But I think that that is pretty much the only really strong pair at the moment for a Wedjat. So if you do want to play Wedjat, go for Valkyrja, that's for sure. But yeah, besides that, just a high-speed unit, that's it. Isis. I think Loki Isis is for inter-server defense not that bad. Because inter-server defense, most people do tend to go in with some kind of bruiser passive team like the Feng Yang Leo Alaya, some Pheromoses, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. She for defense is not that bad. Plus, she's a really cheat code in TOA. So I give her some value that you can make her work. Might you ask, what is the team for inter-server? I would go for a Vanessa or Samath, plus a Triton Isis, and then some kind of damage dealer or disruptor or anything like that that could mess up the team badly. But if you have a Triton move into an Isis, and Isis goes for the skill 3 and provides all silences and all oblivions to the enemy, they're mostly fucked if they go for a bruiser team. So Loki, she is usable for that. Plus TOA is like, she is definitely a best in slot for TOA. That's just a simple thing. Like a lot of TOA stages get very simple for that. Plus that can just simply get you like let's say you pulled Isis, and because of Isis, you're gonna do 30 stars in TOA hell all the time. That just nets you like 450 crystals every month. So it has some more value than units that you're just putting in storage. Neftis, however, Neftis still goes to the hundreds. She is really good for, well, TOA, it's good. Siege offense, still pretty good. However, we got a few more units with the Dark Tanjiro, Truffle, and other units that kind of put her spot for armor breaking in there. Arena offense, it's still a best in slot because of the speed lead and armor breaking. But once again, also, if you do go for a strip of, like, let's say a Chibu, then definitely there's better armor breakers than Neftis because they provide something else besides just the armor break. RTA, she's definitely not really having her spot, at least in high ranks of RTA. Low ranks of RTA, she's still doing okay-ish. But in high ranks of RTA, she's not being picked as much anymore. You can check that by, like, the people that used to spam Neftis all the time. Let's say a True Will, a Diligent, me, you can name it. A lot of those people were, like, spamming. Thompson was spamming, like, Neftis every game. Nowadays, they barely pick Neftis. And the simple reason is she's not really having the meta where AoE CC is high rewarded, and it's more of like a bruiser, single target, resets, pushbacks, those kind of things, them providing an armor break. Plus, Veramos being that strong right now, plus Juno being that strong right now, does give her a little bit of a run for her money. So therefore, she's not 101. Because she's also on defense, she's okay, but she's also... You'd rather go for a defense in Arena for a 33 lead than a 24 lead. So for that reason, Laura has more versatility, usability than a Neftis has in current case. However, Neftis still a very good unit. Oberon. Oberon is just a nuker. It is a little bit niche in RTA, mostly picked with like the Shizuka kind of comp. However, I'm not the biggest fan of that at all. It's mostly easy to just deny that or reset that. It is okay as a Leo counter on a double Nam Will. I kind of like it for that sense. It does do a good amount of damage. It does have the crit awakening right now rather than a resistance awakening. So that's definitely a nice upgrade. But it's also not really fitting his style, where currently Sekhmet is a good resetter, Cigar is a good resetter, Oliver is still a good resetter, and all of those resetters do kind of mess with this unit really badly. So for that reason, it's more niche. It can be used. Definitely if you have a Yeon Hong and you can boost this unit, it's a lot better than without. For Siege offense... There are a lot of other nukers that can kind of do a same to similar thing, with the Federica being a good nuker right now. You still have like the Covenant, or like there's just a lot of good nukers out there that you don't necessarily need an Oberon to be your nuker in slot. And also I think he has an arena lead. Let me actually double check that, but I'm pretty sure that he has arena lead 44 attack. It is nice, but it's also often the case like, yeah, you kind of want to go for speed lead in arena offense anyway. So you could build nuker teams on him, but he's not really that much of a must on that in the first place. So 75, most of the time, just full on nuker set. You want to go for it. Oh, I forgot the build on Neftis. Neftis, in most cases, you just want to go... well, if you use it arena offense, mainly against Camillas, you want to go 15 crit rate. However, it's still like 38.7% chance to crit or something like that. But I like Neftis on decent amount of damage, because if she does no damage at all, she has no chance to kill like Vero monsters or Junos, and then it's kind of bad. So speed, crit rate, attack, or speed, attack, attack, speed, HP, attack, something along those lines. You could go full tank, but then you need to make sure that your other units do a lot of damage. Oberon, however, max crit rate, high damage, good enough speed. Nyx, recently also a unit that I picked up. I think Nyx, if you want to use it RTA, is kind of nice next to a Cigar, Han, and those kind of units. Nyx in RTA is nice if you have units that already provide debuff and he can prolong. Don't use him for the passive that he got buffed, where he takes extra attack bar and he gets extra attack bar if your things get resisted. Because the big issue for that is, you first have the original resistance check and then you have the passive check. But if the resistance check already worked, then the passive check doesn't get activated. Which is kind of if you think about it, that he has a 55 resistance awakening. So, or not awakening, but lead. So the thing is, if already something is resisted, his passive for ATB gain never happens, which is just kind of in the first place. So don't really use him for that part of the passive. Only use him for the part of where he increases like the duration of things. Let's say next to a Neftis, and then you have 2-turn silence, which is definitely a nice way. But then Veromos and Juno also like that nice way. So yeah, that's a little bit of that. Nyx for defense, arena defense, is definitely not that bad. So he definitely has his usabilities for a bunch of spots. Siege offense, defense, wouldn't use him. Arena defense, yes. And RTA is usable. So I'm going to give Nyx an 80, but... yeah, would I give him an 80? Yeah, he does have that RNG factor for arena defense. He definitely is decent in arena defense. And for RTA, he definitely has that annoying factor that he could be good. Now, I'm actually going to put him down to 75, because I feel like He is, both of them is like decent, but both of them also not like the craze. It's like, oh, you might as well just put like a unit that actually did like a lot of damage or did like something proper with it rather than it's kind of a lucky sucky unit. No, I'm not sure about him. It's like 75 rate. I'm gonna place an 80, whatever. Tian Lang. Tian Lang, I would go for RTA, incredibly good. Arena defense, still pretty decent. I would still recommend if you put him on arena defense, still put a high speed unit next to him. Otherwise, you're just gonna get Adriana, Sonia, and that is the hard counter on this. But if you go for a 33 lead Triton Tian Lang, they cannot really go that easily for an Adriana because Adriana is a 111 base, whereas a Triton is a 116 base. You pair that with the Tian Lang on defense is still really good for that. Siege defense is mostly more of like a tower 1, tower 3, like backline kind of thing, so it's not used as much anymore, but maybe in lower ranks it's still used in frontline. RTA, however, it's arguably best counter-picking game. It's just like, oh, you have an Oliver and a bunch of other boosters. Cool, Tian Lang, have fun. Oh, you have a Ragdoll, Tian Lang, have fun. So, yeah, Tian Lang is still incredibly strong. And those early game PvE and that kind of stuff is not going to be doing anything for you. Offense in Siege or Arena, I wouldn't really recommend that as well. But I would say, do we place Tian Lang at 100? No, I think the first, the usability on him is a little bit less. It's more defense kind of stuff and RTA. Sure, Neftis is used a little bit less in RTA, but I think he is in a fair spot on the 95. Do I think so, though? Where was he last time around? I think last time around he was on 100. Yeah, last time around he was on 100. Well, this time around, no, I feel like that's... Also, I've seen a bunch of ragdoll plays just to completely ignore the Tian Lang. Big issue with Tian Lang is his S2 still feels very inconsistent. So if you use him in RTA and the S2 just doesn't strip shit, yeah, no, ain't gonna happen. So I'm gonna give him 95 for that. Still can do a decent amount of damage though. Like his damage set's pretty nice. For the sets, I would go for a speed, HP. Also, last year around, I think that Tian Lang still had a lot of damage on the S2, which is currently a lot less. So for that reason, he's definitely a little bit worse. But speed, HP, and then high additional damage artifacts kind of style. Mi Yang, I think a good siege offense hits. You could build this arena offense hit with him on the Leo, Riley, Mi Yang, and then plus some kind of support unit. That is definitely an option if you don't want to go for the Feng Yang style. I think it might be a little bit more damage output, but also a little bit easier to get killed. But I definitely think he has a bit of usability in there. And for siege offense, I can see some usage well. Plus for RTA, I can see some usage for that as well. I would, if I had a Mi Yang, I would build him as a Leo counter in RTA. And I would just go Vio Will plus, or maybe even Vio Revenge. No, I would go Vio Revenge. And then just go attack, crit damage, attack, or attack, crit rate, attack, and then super high substats on everything else. I would still go crit rate / crit damage on him, though. I wouldn't go like just purely on attack. But I think a Leo counter, you might actually be pretty decent to niche. He has the Vampire built in, so that helps him out a little bit. Siege offense, I think something with a Riley next to it is a very good bruiser unit there as well. Celia is, I would say you see some on arena defense. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it could be annoying if you put fast enough Swiss set on it. I also do see it on Siege defense. Siege defense, the common team is a Carcano plus a Sahat, aka the Wind Bayek, and then a Celia. It is an okay team. I've seen it win a decent amount. I think in lower ranks that can definitely win a decent amount. But in RTA, you're definitely not going to use it at all. So that is just a unit you're going to put on like 2 places on defense. It is okay, but it's not crazy. So I will give that a 65 for that reason. Vivachel, however, Vivachel is still really nice for siege offense. You can definitely make a few siege offenses where you boost up your own unit with, like, let's say a Leo, and then you just insta-kill for that. There's definitely a bunch of options that you could go with a Vivachel. Plus in RTA, Vivachel is always the danger unit. It's like, okay, Vivachel's on the field. When does she take a turn? Is she gonna get a switch destiny skill at the right moment and then instantly wipe one unit? So it always has the fear factor of that unit on the field. But it's just a RTA / siege offense unit. But I think she's really good in those. And she also does enable a lot of like very specific teams. So I'm going to give an 85 to that. Could be Swift, could be Vio. Keep in mind that both for Celia and the Vivachel, crit rate on the 4 is really good. Because their skill 1 is just a lot of speed scaling. So I highly recommend to not go HP on the 4 on those units. Go crit rate on the 4. Maybe even crit damage and a crit rate in the substats. And then HP on the 6. Light Pony. Light Pony is definitely good for defense. I would say Liponia is better than a Nyx. It's good in RTA, it's really annoying in RTA, it's definitely a luck sack unit. If you don't sack, the unit's not great. If you sack a lot, this unit is incredibly, insanely strong. But it's also good for arena defense. It definitely has value in there. You could say like, oh, it can replace Amelia and like the Bolfric team in siege offense. Wouldn't recommend it. The defense buff does more. But for arena defense, brings in the RNG. For RTA, brings in the RNG, the sustain, the healing. Most of the time, 100 res. You want to go Vile Will on it. And then tanky as much as possible. I don't think she's higher than that, mainly because she's also relatively easy to die off as well. Then we go for Alexandra. I think Alexandra is a good last pick. If people don't have any sustain and your Alexandra takes like 1 or 2 turns, does a bit of chip damage, then the Reflect will kill the rest of it. Siege offense, I can definitely see the usage in that as well. It's just good cycling, good damage. And also for arena defense, it's definitely an annoying unit as well. You have to keep in mind, however, that you should not be susceptible to the dot team. The dot team is the thing that counters the Alexandra the most. And if the dot team doesn't counter you by you putting in a Juno or a Pheromones or any of those units, that makes this team a lot better. So that's definitely something you have to look out for. Plus another thing that counters you is Alexandra being dumb. That's the main thing. If Alexandra had better AI, she would be 80, but let's put her 75 because her AI is just dumb. Most of the time you want to go Vile Will and then HP, crit damage HP, or even triple HP. Shan, which is free to play, is actually a really good unit for siege offense. Siege offense common use with like Juno Pheromones or Juno and then Leo or Pheromones Leo, something along those lines. It's really good in TOA. It's exceptionally good in TOA. RTA, we don't see it as much anymore, but to be honest, that is mainly, I think, because people don't have it runed up. Because if you need a CC unit in the 5th slot where the enemy doesn't have any strip, doesn't have any immunity, Shan will actually do really good for you still. It's just the thing that we don't see because it is free to play, people don't think of it. But I think if you might rune up a Shan in the 5th spot, she might actually do really well. Because 2-turn provoke, plus providing the invisibility on self, it's a lot of CC right there. So I give Shan a 75 for that. Most of the time she's built on like Vio, depending how much speed she needs. The amount of speed, like if it's next to a Leo, you go 0, otherwise you go a decent amount of speed. You want to go decent accuracy and, of course, a lot of HP. Leona, I am not the biggest Leona fan. I would say that she is probably some siege offenses hard to kill, but it's kind of rare. Arena defense, siege defense, not going to see it, so it's just an RTA unit. And she just dies to additional damage artifacts. We have a million freaking ignored defense units nowadays. I think she just dies to any armor break. So she's just pretty hard to build. Sure, once again, if you build a whole team around it, she's like Jaeger, she can definitely still work. 5th pick, still potential, but I'm going to give that a 65. The best Leona user out there actually is Livered by a long shot. And the way he built it is not violent, but just giving it an insane amount of stats. So I think his build is something like Revenge, Will, and then Blade or Endure or something. And that is just to give the most insane amount of stats. Also, all of the attack stats on her are completely wasted because all of the defense goes to her attack. And the extra attack that you already had is not extra added in it as well. So you want to have very specific runes for her. And let's say that I would pull her right now. I probably don't have that. If you already have this unit for like 6 years, then you probably have more runes focused on her. But yeah, she's like pretty interesting to build, but still a good 5th pick, I would say. But you could also make it just Vio Revenge. 65 for her. Volantis, I am not a big Volantis fan. Volantis, if you give really good runes to Volantis, is really good. It is an insane 5th pick. Big issue is, his base stat is what? I'm pretty sure it's like something along the lines of... Oh wait, where the hell? Volantis over there. Yeah, 99. If he had like 5 extra base speed or something like that, it's a lot easier to build him on Despair because he needs Despair. He's still a unit by chance if he actually does land his Provoke and his Strip. And yeah, that's just kind of the issue. It's also a unit by chance if he goes for the stun on the counter. So there's a lot of chances on this unit. Whereas you have to put a Despair set that is on a 19 or on a 99 unit that is faster than all of your Fire runes and all of your other Despair runes on units that are like 103, 104 base speeds, which is just super hard to build. If he was easy to build, he would absolutely be like 85 or 90, but the issue is he's that hard to build. He needs the Despair that he mostly ends up for people not being built at all. So yeah, I'm going to give him the 75 for that. He needs the Despair, he needs the high accuracy, he needs the HP on the 4, and that is pretty much the way to go. but he's mostly just fitting in a 4th or 5th spot in the draft. He's not fitting anywhere earlier because then he gets hard count by like Pharaoh Monsters, Junos, and whatnot. So, hey gangs, so yeah, that's just... I'm gonna give that a 75. He is a strong unit, but he's just too hard to make him work. Pader. I think Pader kind of has the same issue, but is a little bit better because Pader is fine on Swift. If I had a Pader, preferably you would like to go for him a Vaio set, faster than your whole team, so if he gets stunned, he can actually remove all of the debuffs as well. But the issue is, once again, are you going to throw like a 190 Vaio set on the Pader, and preferably you have crit rate on the 4, HP on the 6? Yeah, probably not. But you can do that on Swift. I would make Pader on Swift, do exactly that, and then maybe even go crit damage on the 4. And I think Pader that way can do a lot and a lot of damage. So Pader is definitely a nice counter pick. It's just RTA, same as Valantis, just RTA. But yeah, I would say that I'll give that an 80 for being... They're pretty unique in their own style in RTA and a very hard counter pick that is often also a must ban. So I'm going to give just the value of that to 80. I'm not sure if I've ever seen that in Siege offense for neither of them. Could probably use it, but wouldn't really recommend to use that much. Geltnir, very boring unit. Siege defense, still usable. The most common Siege defense I see is probably still Geltnir with a Martina and a Deva, I think. So you have like fast twins, one of the 2 twins is on like Swift, and then you go from there. That's definitely a way to go. But it's also more of like a Tower 1, Tower 3 kind of style. Offense-wise, I think it's still very common with a Windy, and then next to the Windy... Oh, what was next to the Windy? I always forget. Was that Amelia? I think so. So Geltnir, Amelia, Windy, and then Windy is on Destroy, and then Windy just slowly destroys the whole team, and that team pretty much never loses. I think it was something along those lines. The Amelia can also be switched for something else. But yeah, something along those lines is definitely a team that you still see for Siege offense, which is pretty much a free win, because you have that much healing going on, you would never get killed. And then you just slowly destroy things. For arena defense, wouldn't really see it. For RTA, low-key in some matches, especially in lower ranks where people don't really know that they first have to hit something else to get rid of the stacks of Geltnir, and then they can hit the unit that they originally want to kill. I think it can work, but he's not that crazy for neither. So just for the Siege offense free hits, I would say 65 on that. So it's just the Siege offense free hit, but besides that, he doesn't really provide too much. Hurtite, I think Hurtite is only usable in the, well, R5 is an option, Rift Rage is an option, Subjugation is an option. Siege defense used to be good, but is not great anymore. And RTA, Arena offense, Siege offense also not. So Siege defense, you saw it a little bit before, but he kind of lost his spot that it takes too long for him to stack. Sure, you can definitely make niche teams around him where he's like decent and he can make something work. Well, let's actually put him 65. But yeah, he's just most of the time not doing it that well. Common build for Geltnir is Despair, I would say. You can actually put Geltnir on damage. I've seen that before. But is it really necessarily crazy good? Not really. It doesn't add that much damage, but it is an option. It is an option. And Hurtite, you just want to go some overall bruiser style plus damage. Bella. Bella is just RTA. You have seen it sometimes in Siege defense, but Siege defense, there's definitely some better options out there. RTA also kind of lost its spot where it's insanely good, but in most pairs, it is still good with either a Vanessa or a Twin Angels. And you have to put, don't go crit rate on this unit. I like it a lot more on high attack. And then additional damage from attack and speed. So that's the way to go. And then Vaio will in most cases. But I would say an 80 is still fair for it. Mainly RTA unit. You could use the Siege offense. You could use it in Siege defense. Siege defense is once again the common thing. Like whatever is meta at that time for 2 units next to it plus an LD. She could be that LD. Currently we're looking at, let's say, a Terranese plus a Asher. She could fit in that 3rd spot. Lucifer. Lucifer is still insane for the early game. Insane for dungeons. A lot of dungeons. Is good in R5. Siege offense. We don't see it as much anymore, but it still has its usability. You could go for a Leo, Lucifer, Lucian. And that way, the Lucifer, you would have to build high damage on the Leo, makes the Lucifer move, and therefore you make the Lucian move. You are Lucianing with without an attack buff. But it is definitely a thing that could clear things. Arena offense, it's still really good. Most common teams are either, if you have an Eludia, Lucifer Eludia, Leo is insane. Otherwise, if you don't have any other LDs, it's very common to go Adriana, Leo, Lucian. Or you go, instead of the Adriana, you go for Miriam. Those are kind of the options that you have with Lucifer. But there's definitely a lot of options there. In RTA, you kind of need more LDs to make a Lucifer comp shine. So you would have to go for Lucifer, Eludia, plus a Wu Yong. If you have all three of those, sure, you can definitely cleave your way through RTA. But without that, it's probably going to get a little bit more troublesome. So Lucifer can be used as a counterpick into Leo, but it's not really the best option out there. It's okay-ish, but it's not the best. So, but still, overall, Lucifer is a really good unit. And if we're looking at like early game pickup units that are very strong, Lucifer is probably one of the coolest out there. Beelzebub, I think Beelzebub actually deserves a 55. This is one of the few units I legit... No, I'm going to give it 60. It is usable, but it is one of those units I legit barely to never use. It's probably my least used LD5, or let's say top 3 least used LD5s. Big issue he has is that his skill 2 does absolutely no damage if he's not towards like 1% HP, or like at least like 10 to 20% HP. He does like legitimately no damage on that whatsoever on that S2. So he's just spamming skill once, and everyone else is ignoring this unit. In RTA, that's the case. In Siege offense, where Belial is one of the best, this thing, it taking over the spot is horrible. So yeah, arena offense also, arena defense also. So RTA, it's never really having a shot. So it's also always like, okay, what is enough stats to make him fast enough, but still do enough damage, and he doesn't get insta-killed off. Also, him getting reset is just insta-screwed. Plus, he doesn't take a full turn. If he comes back to life, he takes 100% attack bar, and therefore you need artifacts on attack bar on revive. But you cannot get those anymore for the last like year and a half. So he's just pretty much... No, I'm actually gonna one down him. I think he's horrible. You should not... If you think about drafting Beelzebub, there's probably a better option like a Federica that would do 100 times better for you. You can still use it. It is better than a Lydia, but I would really not recommend to use a Beelzebub. He's pretty terrible. Actually, I played this other game, Ethereal Restart, which has a Hoyan, and Hoyan is very close to Beelzebub. The only difference is that every time that he insta-kills something, he also brings them back to life, same as... anything that he kills something, he brings the other unit back to life. But he gains 40% attack while doing that. Also, if he dies, he gains 40% attack. Also, if he dies, he immediately comes back and uses his skill 2 on a low HP. That is how Hoyan works, and that, rather than just being off the battlefield waiting for something else to die, it's just a million times better. If they want to buff Beelzebub, that is an option. And it would actually make him a very cool unit, and that would instantly become like good for RTA and actually dangerous for RTA. Whereas right now, it's just like, yeah, whatever. We can ignore it. Narsha, good for siege defense. Good for siege offense. If you want to go more bruiser, it is okay-ish. RTA is still a decent to good unit as well, so I'm going to give Narsha a 65. Most common build on her is, I would say, Vio, speed, crit damage, attack. If you build her on defense, you can make her a Leo trap as well and just attack, crit damage, attack with high substats. And then you don't care too much about speed. That is definitely an option. She is best paired with an Adriana in RTA, but still a Vanessa plus Narsha setup is really nice. But she's definitely one of those units that needs a lot of good runes to actually make her work. But siege defense-wise, she's definitely still out there as well. So she's a little bit of everything. Where she's just nice in those kind of scenarios. I would even be able to see her in an arena, but probably not as great. But do we one down her for that because she's not like insane in RTA right now? No, I think still because of the defense value, she has more value than, let's say, Abella. So 85 for Narsha. Sienna. Sienna still has the big issue where the skill 3 is not scaling for speed, and that makes her just a lot worse. She was, for briefly, a really good unit into the Byuncho meta because she had one of the better skills to kill the Byuncho because it was a double hit. However, right now, with the Cyrils being buffed, Grogan being buffed, and all of those things being buffed, it's a little bit worse. Arena defense, siege defense, RTA. So she kind of tries everything a little bit. She's okay-ish a little bit in everything, including like TOA, but she's never like insanely good. You might as well just put a chunk pong on a spot to push back or something like that. So she's okay-ish in a lot of spots, but she's never really like crazy good in a spot or anything. So I'm gonna give Sienna 75 for that because of like the versatility versus not being crazy in any of those things. Humble, I think Humble is a 55 as well. And the main issue for him, he has no damage. If I put my absolute best runes on a Hanwoo, full rage, on a 9 fight set next to him, plus the 50 attack lead, plus the best artifacts I have, and he cannot kill a full team of 44 lead HP and then just tanky, then he's garbage. Like that's, he did like 50k and he needed like 65 or 70 at that moment. These skill 3 just does way too little damage. Sure, the passive denier is good, but way too little damage on the skill 3. Plus, he has the big issue where the S2 is absolutely useless. Skill 1 and skill 2 are absolutely useless for him. It does nothing. So for that reason, Humble gets a straight up 55 from me. That unit is just not great. Mugwell, I would say if you have a Han, Mugwell goes up to like 80 or 75. If you don't have a Han, Mugwell's at 60. It's just a despair unit. You want to build it on whatever like high despair set. It is relatively easy to build on despair, but it's definitely not one of those units I would really recommend to use. It's also, if you see a Mugwell, it's just like, oh, the enemy goes Juno, and Juno completely annihilates this whole thing for like everything it does. So this is not really that great. Talisman, one of the cooler units in game, allows you to go for a lot of interesting cleaves. In RTA, it's definitely not that bad, but it's also not crazy good. But Siege offense and Arena offense, it's absolutely insane. And for Arena offense, best team there is with the Nefties, but you could also go for just a Dark Tanjiro, or you go for a Truffle, or you go for any good armor breaker that way. And the same thing for Siege. You can just go Truffle, Tiana, and a Talisman. It's a free hit against a lot of things. And this thing does do an insane amount of damage. You only want 70 crit rate because of the, or 17, not 17. 70 crit rate because of the crit buff that it provides to itself. Plus it has attack buff on itself, so it's definitely the best in slot damage dealer for Arena offense because you don't need an attack buff, and that's just absolutely insane. For RTA, if there's one armor break on the enemy and this thing takes a turn, he will kill that one enemy and then take a second turn dealing a lot of damage. So Talisman is absolutely insane, and Talisman gets a 90 for me for that reason. Van Cleef has been buffed like a million times. I've seen some people kind of use it. I kind of like Van Cleef on a Swift set where you can like Swift and then strip, stun, armor break kind of style. But his activation rates are still a little bit on the low-ish side where he still struggles around that side. Base speed isn't the crazy high, so he's a bit in RTA. Anywhere else wouldn't really use him, but yeah, 75. He can be used, but you have to invest good runes to him. Crack, I think Crack is somewhat underrated. He does have low base speed, but he has a bit of chip damage on his skill 3. And the little bit of chip damage that he provides on his skill 3 does help you to make it easier to nuke things down. Big issue is, however, that Adriana does give the speed buff, attack buff way better than him on a higher base speed. So yeah, it is easy to make units follow up and Crack, but yeah. Siege offense, Arena offense is usable, but it's kind of niche. RTA, if you go for a full cleave team, is usable, but also kind of niche. Crack, however, on defense, I actually forgot about that. Crack on defense, like a Chandra, Crack, and an Odin or something like that, is actually pretty strong because let's say you kill the Odin twice, a high damage Crack with the S2 can still provide a lot of damage that he could like two-shot like a Sonya or something like that. So with that team in mind in defense, Crack, I will give that an 80. It's not that bad. Gurkha, definitely a unit that a lot of people hate a lot, but I feel like Gurkha is not that bad. It's kind of bad, but not that bad. And the reason I say it's not that bad, in the end, he only lost his healing. The thing of him cycling a million turns and like keeping him provoke, he still has. The most annoying thing about him, he still has. The worst part about it is that he just simply has issues where he gets hit too much. But if you put a support next to a Gurkha, Gurkha is still incredibly good in RTA. Wouldn't use it for Arena offense, Siege defense, but a 5th pick Gurkha is definitely something. If you have Gurkha, I would absolutely still keep that runed up. You could even just triple revenge a Gurkha and then just have it as a 5th pick. Moment he takes a turn, he provokes everything. None of these units are for life are ever going to take another turn. The only thing is you have to make sure that you have to keep your Gurkha alive. But that's relatively easy right now. Just put an Adriana next to it. Not an Adriana, what's Angela. Angela, the pure vanilla cookie water. Put that next to it, or put a Raccoon next to it, or a Gapso next to it. Those things will keep a Gurkha alive. Plus, Gurkha has armor break on the S2, and he has decent damage because he's max HP scaling, so you can actually go for a crit rate slot for Gurkha, and rather than just having him like provoke all the time, deal a proper amount of damage for him, because if he revenges on an armor break with this, that does actually hurt while provoking. So I think Gurkha is somewhat underrated. Sure, it's not crazy good, but I think he's underrated. 70 for Gurkha. Seiishizo. I would say arena defense, no. Siege defense, no. But it is pretty much a free hit and free win on arena offense. She is really good in RTA, but I think she's only good in RTA against debuffs. If you use her against buffs, her passive doesn't mostly provide enough where it's really good. Also in RTA, you have to keep in mind, if the enemy is smart and they don't have AoE debuffs, your enemy controls where the debuffs land. It is not something that you decide. So therefore, your enemy controls where you heal. You do not decide where you heal. So if you have a smart player playing against the Seiishizo, it's not doing that crazy much. Sure, she's pretty good. Sure, she's mostly a must ban. But Pheromones being that good right now, Juno being that good right now, Tetra also, it is relatively common that one of those 3 units is better than Seiishizo. So she's not necessarily a best in slot. Only place she's best in slot is, I would say, in the Feng Yang Leo Alaya team. She's absolutely a best in slot in that. So she definitely has good value for that offense. She's also the most boring unit in game because she's just a passive. It might as well be like the Yu-Gi-Oh thing where you place a card on the field and you change the field. That is Seiishizo, because her S1 and S2 don't deal anything. Also for that reason, Seiishizo, do not put her on Vio. Like, sure, if you have a lot of nukers next to Seiishizo and you want to revive those, sure, maybe, whatever. But in most cases for Seiishizo, just go Despair Revenge, because that's the only way that her skill 1 does something. And otherwise, her skill 1 does absolutely nothing. And she just starts wasting Vio turns. Like, oh, I took a Vio on Seiishizo. Now it's like, I did 2 times S1 and I stripped something. Like, fucking useless. I'll give her... Do I give her a 1-up? No, I actually keep Seiishizo at 85. I think that's strong enough for her. Sure, she's nice and all of that. But for RTA, it's often there's a better pick out there as well. Sure, there are definitely some matches where she's absolutely best in slot and has to be banned. Or if she's not banned, it's an insta-win. But those kind of drafts, you don't see too much. Even the Layla Tomoe Hey Gang comp, which I've mentioned a few times already, is kind of figured out. She loses to that because of the pushbacks. And that's the main issue. If she doesn't get turns or the allies don't get turns, or the allies are heal blocked. Heal blockers are super hard counter, whereas heal block doesn't counter a Pheromones or a Tetra or a Juno that much. Then she definitely has a lot of issues in that. If you struggle against Seiishizo, if you play a comp where Seiishizo is often your nemesis, you don't want to play against that, start picking Amber. Amber fucks her up really, really bad. It's the best heal blocker in game. Then we have Duman, and I would say Duman, same level. Really good in RTA. Most likely a must ban in RTA. If it's not banned against a bruiser team, then she will most likely just take over that match, unless she gets 15% checked. Siege offense is usable. It's a little bit more tricky, but if you fight like a bruiser-ish team, let's say the Terranese with a... Yeah, let's say the Terranese team with the Ashur. You landed on the Ashur, you just wait a few turns and the Ashur dies and you can repeat that. Just put a few tanky units next to it and it's as simple as that. Like Camilla plus whatever tanky, and it's pretty simple like that for siege offense hit. RTA-wise, I would build it swift and I would build it super tanky. I wouldn't necessarily go resistance on it. Max accuracy is needed, but swift and tanky because people are always focusing her first, which makes her also a lightning rod where she gets focused first and then your other damage dealers can actually do their shit. And for siege offense, I would also just go tanky, but then you could go 100 res if she does tend to get hit. Onmyouji, definitely one of those units that I feel like does too little damage at the moment. And if he did more damage, he would definitely be a something. Into Ragdolls, he's still okay. You definitely have to invest some decent runes into him to make him work, but you could also place those runes on, let's say, a Dominic or Sierra or something like that. Well, Sierra needs more accuracy, Dominic doesn't. So Dominic is the best similar unit in that, I would say. But he's still okay-ish. He does have an armor break set up on the skill 1. His skill 2 does do a lot of damage still. His skill 1 is just kind of weak side. But I think he is still usable. It's definitely a unit I would still keep runed up in the moment that you say, like, okay, I see a lot of stuns on the enemy side, which there are a lot of stuns right now, especially with the Jinxa being introduced, stunning a lot more. Bunch of other units, definitely still a lot of stunners out there. He is still good against all of that. But he would like a little bit more damage. That's true. Dorothy. I think Dorothy is very underrated for arena offense. But then again, only for arena offense. And the main team for arena offense, she's actually the only one that can one-to-one replace Nephthys in the comp of Tiana Kabila. And how you do that is you go Dorothy, Tiana Kabila, Galleon. And she destroys HP, and because of the destroyed HP, a Byuncho or a Kiki or any of those units are going to deal less damage on you as well, so the cleanup is easier. The skill 2 is pretty good for cleanup as well. So she definitely has value in that, but she would need best runes to deal enough damage because her damage is not that insane. Plus you're waiting for a Galleon to miss. But I would say it's definitely one of the stronger arena offenses out there. And that definitely gives like a bit of uniqueness to be able to outspeed 33 Tritons if your Kabila is fast enough. But I'm just going to put it on 70. She's definitely not bad. She's only good for that. RTA wouldn't really use her unless you go for a full cleave, of course. Siege offense. No, I don't think she would have too much use in there. But there's definitely some options where you could use Dorothy. Dorothy used to be like a 50 straight up, but I would say low-key 70, maybe 75. High damage set is all you want to go for. Kiki, arena defense, siege defense, late pick, 5th pick in RTA. It's a little bit of everything. It's no longer as crazy good for siege defense, arena defense. I think for in-server defense, still one of the better options out there. But she's just a bit good everywhere, and for that reason, we're just gonna go for it that way. You do want to rune this on just super high HP, and in most cases, if it's more of a bruiser fight, add in Destroy on her as well. So 80 for that one. Daniel, I am not a big Daniel fan because you need to have a lot of setup. You first have to AoE strip, then you have to AoE pushback, and then your Daniel moves for damage. And then he doesn't even full kill. Well, if there's 2 units setup, I want the unit at least to freaking die because of it, right? So that's kind of the issue with Daniel. I'm not the biggest Daniel fan. I'm going to give that a 65 for that reason. Most of the time, it's just fire and then tanky bolt. He can be annoying with the pushback and stuff, but he's just... Often there's a better unit fitting doing more than Daniel would do. Jackson, not the biggest Jackson fan, especially since Lucia's released. Lucia and Jackson kind of do the same thing where they hard counter pushbacks. But Jackson does it in a way where his S1 and S2 are mostly... Well, the S2 stun is okay-ish, but kind of useless. He deals no damage, whereas Lucia is an insane healer on top of that on triple revenge as well. So with that, I would say Jackson, sure in the right draft, could be a little bit. But he would only be good if you counter 2 pushback units. Let's say the old meta with a Moore and Changpang. Sure, Jackson would have been good. But the big issue is, those units are not picked that much anymore. So he's not really fitting the meta. If there was a different meta, he would have definitely been better. But right now, and he needs to be built on Despair, which is fine for him, because otherwise he's skill 1. He's like Seiishizo, he's just a passive totem. And where Seiishizo is a good passive totem, Jackson is not really the greatest of passive totems. Ella, definitely a niche bruiser unit, mostly RTA or siege offense. I could see this being used as well. Yeah, siege offense, I can definitely see that being used. I definitely think you can go for some creative teams in that. Also for RTA, definitely some creative teams with increasing the cooltime, providing the healing, providing the immunity. It's definitely a well all-round unit. I could even argue that, would it be useful to use that next to a Leo, Ella, and then 2 units that normally have like more cooldown on their skills, and then you provided that they can do their things. Let's say you go for 2 ignore defense nukers that are semi-tanky, semi-damaging, and then work your way around that faster than going for Riley. Probably not, but mainly then just an RTA unit, maybe siege offense unit. But Ella, I will give that an 80. Most of the time, just 100 res, Fio, and fast. Maya is just a siege defense unit, and it's not doing that great at siege defense. Am I going to place it all the way down? No, actually, I do know some people that have decent success with Maya on defense. I absolutely have no clue how they're getting that, though, because Maya, shit, no. Maya gets 50. Fuck that unit. It just does too little. Where Nora does do a decent amount with getting the dots in and that kind of stuff. The biggest issue of Maya is that a part of her passive, where she doesn't get hit by multi-hit, is selfish. It's just for herself. If that was on multiple units, then it would have been nice. Like, let's say once per her turn, she would deny all of the multi-hits AoE. Something like that would add her in a lot more, where it would be harder. It's like, oh, Leah Cleave can only hit once. Oh, Lucia Cleave can only hit once instead of 3. That would be really nice for defense. But right now, it's like, yeah, what are you actually doing? It's like, yeah, I'm surviving. It's like, yeah, but you're doing jack shit. It's like, you're surviving. We're doing jack shit, we're surviving. Yeah. Benedict is a little bit a killer on Julian's, but he's not really doing a great job at it. Is also a killer for, I would say, Theomarses and stuff. But even on Theomars, it's not really doing that great. It can be used in RTA, it can be used in siege offense. That's about it. But no, I'm actually gonna down him to 65. Most of the time, you just want to build some damage set on him. Could go for additional damage artifacts, but mainly just decent damage set. You do want to go crit rate, crit damage on him, because he does actually scale with that rather than the Dominic doesn't scaling with that. So, but yeah, he's just not that great. Maximilian, which is currently, well, actually used to be one of the lowest win rate units in RTA, in G3 at least. It is still pretty good for siege offense, but then again, he has one chance for landing armor break, which he can miss. So therefore, the armor break chance of him is as good as a Gemini, which is not that, or Galleon, which is not that crazy much. Arena offense, for that reason, he is as good as a Gemini is. So I would not use that, because if you're not using Gemini, then you shouldn't be using a Maximilian as well. RTA, he's kind of lost his shine there as well. So I would actually say that, he's okay to good in RTA, and he is okay to good in siege offense. That is the main thing. So I still use him. Siege defense, okay, I give him 1 up for siege defense. He does still have the value in siege defense, but he's definitely no longer as great as used to be, where he's like an insta win on siege offense. Because it's just the meta is kind of changing, where it's harder to fit him in. There's more speed teams where you cannot really use it that well. He can miss the armor break, and therefore you do absolutely no damage, and it is a little bit troublesome. Plus RTA, I think no, I'm actually gonna 1 down to 85, because in RTA, unless you build a whole team around him, which is very predictable, he's not gonna do that great. And if you don't have a lot of other LDs to pair with it, let's say the Wunsa or Laura or Veronica or those kind of like insane strippers, it's not gonna do that well, because it's just going to be Hagan counters this, Abellio counters this, Sekhmet counters this, Athnas counters this, Sonia counters this, and all of those units that I just mentioned are very freaking meta. So yeah, that's just a big issue, where his RTA shine is definitely a little bit down. He still has good shine in arena defense, arena offense. That's what I would say. But then again, he's kind of predictable there as well. But 80 for Maximilian. You could go Despair, you could go Swift, you could go Vio on him. You could go crit rate on the 4, you could go attack on the 4 and the 6, you could go accuracy on the 6. There's a lot of options. Just kind of depends like how you also want to do the artifacts. If you go for high additional damage artifacts, then you probably want to go for attack and attack. So slot 4 attack, slot 6 attack. Or you want to go for accuracy if you make sure that you land your debuffs. Shun. Shun is okay-ish. He just has the big issue where he has to land his shit. If he lands his shit, he's actually not that bad. But he's also not crazy good. I'm going to give him 65. He's kind of a bruiser-ish unit. You can put him on defense. Mostly doesn't do that well. You can use him in RTA. Mostly doesn't do that well. So it's just kind of a little bit over there. Bruiser unit, high crit rate. I think you just need crit rate, and then rest you can go tanky, because the ignore defense does do enough damage if it eventually lands. But that is about it. Ritsu goes for 55 for me. This unit has the most inconsistent, weird, dumb shit kit there is in the game. And let me explain for the people that do not own a Ritsu. Ritsu has this skill 3 where, let's actually grab Ritsu. Skill 1, skill 2 are kind of familiar. But the skill 3 is a big issue. You also have, they added in a thing last year, which just made it even dumber. But the thing is, if the Shadow Trap is usable, you will always use it. So you use it on one target, then you have 2-turn cooldown, and then afterward, you use it again. Makes sense? But the issue is you cannot choose to not use it. If the target is already trapped, and you don't want to trap it again, because you would go on cooldown. If you hit the same target again, this skill goes on cooldown, whereas the trap was already there. Doesn't make sense. If you hit something else, the trap moves from that character to another character. Doesn't make any sense. Also, the decrease slow doesn't make that much sense, because you actually do want to hit something at some point. Also, the thing that is trapped, the moment you kill it, the trap is gone. So that also doesn't make sense. Plus, if you miss this thing, it also doesn't make sense. So yeah, that's just, the whole kit of Ritsu is just really, really bad. It just doesn't help you at all. This thing should either guaranteed land, or if you kill something, the trap should go on something else. Or if you hit the same thing, the trap shouldn't go on cooldown. Or if you hit something else, then they also get a trap. One of those 3 things buffs would make his kit a lot better. But yeah, while not having those 3 things, it's just bad. And we don't need all 3, would be too OP. But one of the 3 would be nice. Veronica. A lot of Veronica owners say Veronica's really shit at the moment. Then again, we did see Kaylee and Bao absolutely smack the living shit out of everyone with Veronica and SWC. But then again, that's Kaylee and Bao runes and having a Wunsa next to it and blah, 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 all of those units. I would say that Veronica is just RTA and nothing else than RTA, but I think it's kind of on the Wunsa spot as well. If you do have the good pairs, it is really good. It's also just a fine pair with a Sierra, but you do need good runes and good stuff to make it work on it, because it is in the end a pretty inconsistent unit, because you go through the double resistance check. If those don't land, you might be in a troublesome position. However, if you do land those, it might be insta GG as well. So Veronica gets a 80 for me. Most of the time, you just want to build it Swift, wouldn't go Fire, wouldn't go Despair. Destiny, in my opinion, still best looking skill 3 in game, or best looking skill in general in game. It is just too hard to build because Destiny needs high crit rate, high crit damage, high attack. You want to have high speed, you still want to be survivable, and you want accuracy to land your skill 3. That's a little bit too much. I think the skill 3 should get a strip. Would still be as hard to build, but let's say you strip Armor Break and Oblivion in one skill would be pretty cool, right? But yeah, it's just the skill 2. I would almost say that she needs a skill 2 passive rather than the skill 2 nuke that she has right now. I think that she kind of needs that. I think she is still definitely usable as a nuker. She's mainly in Siege offense, Arena offense. RTA, I will build as a Leo counter because that removes the need for speed. That's a different game, doesn't matter, but you get the idea. But I definitely do think she is usable. It's just pretty hard to build. And with that, it makes it more difficult. But she is usable in all 3 scenarios over here. Well, I'll give that a 75. In most cases, I would say double Nem Will for RTA. For the other things, just high enough damage on whatever set you can get with like Swift Focus or whatever you need Swift Blade. Adri. I think Adri is kind of underrated for RTA. She does have always defense buff on self. She heals and she armor breaks. And she also guards. That's definitely a decent RTA unit right there. It's mainly in bruiser fights, but late pick bruiser fight, not bad. Siege offense, definitely not bad. Arena offense, I would say that she fits very well next to the Leo, Elia, Adriana. Or no, wait, the Leo, yeah, Leo, Elia, and Feng Yang. That one, not Adriana. Plus an Adri, I think that's a very strong combination to also put her in to just make things a little bit faster. Sure, it's just an auto team and you will clear anyways, but it's definitely not a bad siege offense next to a Feng Yang, Alaya, something along those lines. Like the defense bruiser units in general do pretty good in offense, so I'm gonna give that 75. I would say Boulder on Fio crit damage defense or Fio crit rate defense, and then speed. Speed on the slot 2 or defense on the slot 2. Giselle used to be best in slot for arena defense, used to be best in slot for siege defense. RTA, I think at lower ranks, it's good to decent. In a late pick, it's still good if the enemy doesn't have that many strips, so they cannot really deal with the invis. Overall, it's a pretty solid unit, currently still. Arena defense, it fell down a little bit, but still decent. Siege defense, also same thing, but it's still a really nice, decent unit. And RTA, it's pretty solid as well, so I'm actually gonna one-up Giselle. Yeah, she's pretty good for all of that. Most cases, you want to build their speed crit rate defense, and then via will. You could go crit damage on the 4, you could go defense on the 4, but I like some damage on there. Crit damage is basically a little bit too much because you also want enough speed and enough accuracy. And crit rate is probably the nice sweet spot, and then you can go for crit damage in the artifacts that way. So 90 for Giselle. Then we have this thing, and that's shit. This is even shitter than shit. No, this unit is like worst reviver in game. I'm surprised that she never got like a proper buff yet, because she's like the longest unit being shit without getting like proper buffs. Like they kind of tried on these two, but they're still shit after 6 buffs. They kind of tried on this one, got buffed like a few times already, still shit. But yeah. Pure Vanilla Cookie, Dark, that one is also pretty shit. It has the issue where it lands the slow, and with the slow, it is countered by Hagang. If they remove that slow and just put in more attack bar decrease or something, it would be better. Base speed is pretty low, and those are just the 2 issues that she fights with. Whereas she's only like an RTA unit. Anywhere else wouldn't really use it. So in that case, I would just build it like Swift. You kind of have to go Swift on it because she's not really worth a Vio set. And because she has like, what's her base speed? It's like 90 something. Yeah, 96. That's like really bad for an AoE strip. If she rather had like an absorb attack bar of like 30, or if she had an absorb attack bar of 30% and then no slow, it would be better because it would counter Hagang a lot more. So yeah, going on next. Kovachi is used in siege defense in the team of Chandra, Kovachi, Odin. It's pretty common out there. You could go for Swift. Chandra could go for Swift Kovachi. There's definitely options in there out there. It's definitely strong for that. And it's still one of the better units for RTA as well. Anywhere else wouldn't really recommend to use it. Best pairs for RTA are kind of LDs such as Han, Julian, and those kind of things. But it is still also good next to just a Fire Monkey or any kind of damage dealer that you have that does damage by just normal hits or just attack scaling. And yeah, Kovachi definitely has a lot of versatility in that. Zinezek was pretty much best counter against Gianna for a little while. Maybe still is. It's definitely better than Pater. It is just an RTA unit, but I think Kovachi or the Zinezek is really, really insane as a counter to that. And the main reason is that you just have that every turn, where the Pater has it once every turn, or like once in a while. And once in a while means only in the human form, not in the Druid form. Zinezek will always be able to do his shit. And for Kovachi, Swift is the right build, but Vio is fine as well. But I would definitely recommend go Swift 100 res. Zinezek, I recommend to go Vio Revenge, not Vio Nem, but Vio Revenge, so you have a little bit more healing coming in from the skill 1. And then be faster than all of the other allies. His base speed isn't... He has 100, so on Vio it's a little bit more rough to do. But he's definitely worth it if he always moves earlier than the rest of the team, because then all of the stuns are just nullified, and he's really, really good in that. Moving on next. Ivor. Light Ivor. Light Ivor is insane for siege defense, insane for arena defense, and really good in RTA. Could be built Vio, could be built Swift. Thing that you have to keep in mind is that his skills are inconsistent. You can add 85 accuracy on it, that I've seen a few people do, because like, oh yeah, the skills are not landing, I have to put 85 accuracy. Yes and no. You have to land 85 accuracy if you want to push back Riley's or 100 res Valajul, which most Valajuls aren't, or anything else that's 100 res. Yes, then you need 85 accuracy. But most of the time, you're hitting a Zibala, or you're trying to push back a Sekhmet, or an Etna, or a Sonya. Those things are not going to be high in resistance, and therefore you don't need high accuracy. Just around like 40 to 50 accuracy is fine. Go for very high stats in speed, HP, and HP. Maybe an attack in the slot 4 or 6, that's fine as well. And then go high additional damage by speed, HP, and attack. And she will deal a lot of damage while just taking a lot of bruisering turns. And that's mainly for RTA. For arena defense and siege defense, you could build her Vio, you could build her actually on crit rate slot 4, and then have her rock in a lot of damage, because she actually does have a decent amount of damage that way if she crits on her armor breaks that she self-provides. But for RTA, I think a lot of people are using her wrong, feeling like, okay, she needs to take the first turn and then she needs to disrupt the enemy and otherwise insta-lose. I think it's more of like, okay, she can do that, but if she doesn't do that, she still has very high value in the rest of the turns because she takes that many turns later on. And if you really need the unit to, is like, okay, if I don't land this, I lose, Sekhmet probably does better for you. So that's why the Ivor is mostly misplaced, but I think Ivor in general is insanely strong in RTA siege defense and arena defense as well. Would I place this one higher because it's also... No, I'm actually going to place the Ivor one higher. Because in the end, Ragdoll and stuff is not that crazy for defense. No, I actually feel like Ivor is that good that I'm going to place it on 100. I feel like Ivor's really, really insane at the moment. Then we have Sigurd, which has the team up. We have seen Neff from the SWC Europe Cup stomp insanely well with it. It is, however, elevated by also having a Han and a Ragdoll and then insane runes to make it super fast, because the base speed is not super high for a unit like that. But it is also a unit, it has the skill 1 armor break, it has the skill 2 pushback and dots. At least I'm pretty sure it's pushback. Let me double check that real quick. Do you push back? We have decreased attack bar. Yeah, that's a decent amount of pushbacks as well. So yeah, definitely a nice solid unit over there. But it is definitely elevated by having more dark units, or mostly more elevated by having the Han. Without that, it's not as great. Siege defense, haven't really seen it too much. Arena defense, also not that much. So I'm going to put her at like a 75. It's definitely a unit if you put the right investment and you have the right units next to it. It's really good. Without that, maybe not as great. So 75 for her, mostly built on Swift, could build her on Vio. Well, now we have Kiara. Kiara on defense. I've tried all kinds of Kiara defenses for Siege. Never actually performed that well because the 21 lead is a little bit too low. Also, she kind of needs to take the double turn to actually get her ignore defense in. And otherwise, she just like buffs or she just ignores defense on a low hit. Because her hit without any buffs doesn't do that much damage. So that's kind of the issue for her. She is niche to nice for Siege offense. Siege offense, you can definitely create some Siege offenses that are pretty decent for her. RTA, she is decent, but she needs a very specific comp to work her way around. So you need like to work with a Sipala or something, or with Yeonhong or something like that. But she can definitely be usage for like other units as well. If the enemy doesn't have that much strip, she's a good late pick. So definitely has some values in there. I will mostly build it on Swift. You could go double Nem Will, but I like her more on Swift Will. And then a little bit tanky and then as high as much damage as possible on the right speed that you need her at to move before your other nukers. Then we have the Light Ezio, and Light Ezio has one really big issue, and that's Resistance Awakening. For some fucking reason, this thing still is Resistance Awakening. It is absolutely a best-in slot, I would say, for the team with the Jemire Homunculus. And then you need probably about like a plus 140 speed on this thing to make it work. But then you have one hit without attack buff and one hit with attack buff. On my absolute best runes, best artifacts at the 140 speed mark, this thing does about like a 40-ish K damage. That is not enough damage to kill most things if they go like full on tanky. That is just his biggest issue, and that is my best runes. Sure, there's people with better runes out there, but there's also a lot of people saying like, yeah, I cannot build that shit. So that's kind of the big issue he has, and he's only siege offense. I don't really like him in RTA that much. So it is, especially for these people that like a free siege offense hit, it's a pretty nice unit. But besides that, he doesn't have that much value, and he's pretty darn hard to build as well. So while you can use him RTA double Nem Will, you can do that. Most of the time he's not performing that well, but you could. Then we have the Dark Bayek. Salah, I'm not a big fan. I've seen it on siege defense here and there next to like a Kakano plus something, but not a big fan. He's very RNG. Siege offense wouldn't use it to RNG. RTA wouldn't use it to RNG. So just siege defense, and if you like RNG value in your siege defense, he is an option you could go for. Maybe even build him on Swift or so, and he takes a lot of turns and goes for a lot of that. But yeah, in most cases, I'm not really a big Salah fan. Then we have Altair, and Altair I think no one has ever used in their life. That's most likely the most useless free unit we've ever gotten in the game. I'm legit barely even sure what he does. I think he rocks in more damage if he didn't get hit in the previous hits or some bullshit, but he's just terrible. Maybe if you use it, put good runes on him, it's like 55, but he is more usable than this. But there's probably better replacements for him. Diaz is also one of those units that I would say is probably better replacement for him. I've seen some people use it for arena defense after a Triton, but there's better options. Siege offense, defense, there's better options. RTA, there's better options. I think it's just like this. Like, sure, you could build him like Swift high damage or Fire high damage, but I'll give it a 65. If you invest good runes into him, he could work, but most of the time, yeah. Then we have Devaraja. Arena defense, sometimes use RTA late pick. Really good for RTA late pick. So I'm going to say 80 for that. Most of the time you want to build it Fire, high tanky. I'm not sure if people rock it with crit rate. I think it's just speed, HP, high accuracy, and then on the right tuning to move after your strips. And that's about it, how people use it. So I'm going to give that an 80. Pretty solid unit overall. Jessica. There are some people that really like Jessica. It is arguably really good against the Layla Tomoe Heigang team. But once again, that team is also not that crazy, and Necroma does that job way better. So I would say Jessica is HP elite for arena defense, but the people that used it before, I just thought, like, stop using it, just go for a 33 lead plus Triton, and they started getting more success. So Jessica, for me, has not that much value. I would say it's a good siege offense tank, though. I give her that value. Siege offense tank is definitely a nice light tank right there, because she does ignore like everything that the enemy brings. Let's say they have a Zeratul on the enemy side, or Gianna or whatever that brings a bunch of debuffs. She will eat those and spread those back. So Jessica for siege offense is definitely a free win. RTA maybe niche usable here and there. I don't know. Liliana, which is a pretty trash unit as well. It does have some siege defense value, and that's mainly to the sense where she has AoE armor break at a pretty often rate. But besides that, it's most likely just nukeable, and her AI is pretty shit as well, so I can give that a 60 by best. It's mostly just like Fire, whatever build. Ildong has the uniqueness for making dungeons a lot easier. Also has the potential for the fastest teams out there. Siege offense, I've never actually seen it being used, but I could see it being used, because if you use him, you don't necessarily need an attack buffer, and therefore you take one less turn, but you can use him still as like the bruiser later on in the fight. So I could see him being used. Let's say you use a high damage Chandra, so the skill 1 is highly elevated by that. You use a Federica, so you boost with the Chandra to the Federica with the S2, and then the Federica can insta-kill, and then you just bruise it like 2v3. I can definitely see like a siege offense like that working. Arena offense, probably would not really recommend to use it unless you go for some like Lucian comp where you only need like a Dova Lucian and then this thing. Could be an option. And for RTA, it is good, but you need to invest really good runes into him and the whole team around him to actually make him shine. So, is a nice unit, is niche, is good in a bunch of places, but it's also not super exceptional. It does also help out, like, maybe I'll give like an 85 to it. But that's mainly because he's also that good in the PvE dungeons. Only thing is, in like the PvE dungeons, you don't want to take a turn on him. You want to make sure that all of the other things kill before he takes the turn, which is a little bit odd as well, but he does do an insane job at that. So 85 for Uldong. Gapso, which is the free-to-play one, of course. Gapso is really good in some siege offense if you want to have a bruiser that has a little bit of damage. It's definitely great for that. RTA, absolutely great pick as well. There's a few other options with an Raccoon or an Angela or those kind of things. It's definitely best pair with a Ragdoll, also against the Ragdoll, so the Ragdoll owner cannot pick it. But definitely a unit that is usable in a whole bunch of places and is pretty decent. I would also say if you're very early game PvE or a very early game PvP, you can place in one defense as well. So I think Gapso is pretty all around in general. So I'm going to give 85 to Gapso. It's just not for the dungeons, but everything PvP related, he's kind of usable. You could even use him in like a slow clear team because he's just... Slow clear teams is just based on like dealing damage by either defense or HP, by tanky stat, and then being sustaining, annoying, and not dying. Well, Gapso is pretty much all of that, so I'm gonna give Gapso an 85 for that. It's actually funny to see that Veramos and Gapso are pretty high ranked amongst all of the LD5, so you have a good LD5. It's right over there. Light Twin Angel. I think Light Twin Angel for RTA is really freaking good at the moment. But it is just good for RTA. Anything else... Wouldn't use it in Siege Offense, I think. Wouldn't use it in RTA. Well, probably I would use it in Siege Offense, but that is me. But then I would use it probably with, like, Sierra? Would I use that with a Sierra? I'm not sure. Well, there's a few options that you could do. You could... Maybe it's the best stripper for a Bomber team in the first place. Would that be? I don't know. There's a few options that you could maybe use in Siege, but mainly I would say RTA. It's just incredibly good in RTA, but he's very much elevated by you having good artifacts. If you have good artifacts by speed, HP, and attack, you want to go probably Swift Will or just Swift Broken on him. Max Security on the S3. He's definitely very nice, and his best pair is actually a Sierra on this pair. So he strips, and Sierra has a chance to AoE this pair. That's probably the best pair that I've seen for it, but I think that this unit is insanely good for RTA. Then we have the Dark Twin Angels, which would be really good if the activation rate on the armor break would be better. Because this one has an armor break for 3 turns, which you don't really need. Just give me 2 turns with a higher rate. But it's a 2 times hit with 50, so you're adding up like the odds of actually landing your death breaks like 75, a little bit less. But yeah, that's just an issue. That's too little. And then you boost up a unit to move afterwards from 0, which is a really nice pair. Like, let's say you would always land the death break. You could use this thing to set up for a nuker, and then it's super nice. But then again, afterwards, he has like the bruiser things for like immunity and blah, 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 that got buffed. He is usable, but he's super niche, and he's most likely going to miss, and that's just his big downfall. Most of the time, you just want to build it Swift or Fade or something like that. Light Geralt, also known as Lars. The only one that uses this is Mr. Slot or Monagua. He does have a decent amount of armor break with the adrenaline. He can rock in a lot of turns. But I think it's more of a niche unit, and they want to use it because of using the shinies rather than it's actually really good. I think it could be used for a little bit of everything, but it's never really good at any of the things. So I would give that a 70. And most of the time, I think you want to build it like on the additional damage style. So maybe a speed crit rate attack or speed crit rate HP, and then additional damage by whatever. And then the crit rate still helps you with the armor breaks that you land. The armor breaks, right? That I'm not saying shit that doesn't make any sense. Do your armor break on the S2, you do each hit the crazy armor break, and then, yep. But he has a decent amount of multi-hits and chance for multi-hitting, so additional damage artifacts can help a little bit on that. So you could just also simply go like speed attack or speed HP attack, and then just have him as like a main armor breaker. But then again, Dark Herald, 50. Not gonna talk about it. Arguably shittiest unit in game, but I think he's pretty on par with the other 4 shittiest units in game. Light Siri, I think this unit is actually underrated. I think this unit is really nice. You can definitely make some niche hits, where you use Light Siri and make it move twice next to a tableau or something. And sure, she takes a few more turns to actually rock up her speed rather than a Sonya or a Siri instantly going in with a hard hit. But if you go for a little bit more of a bruiser fight and she takes multiple turns, she is really fucking strong. And the thing is, she is mainly speed scaling, so you can just simply go speed, crit rate, HP, rock in a lot of tanky stats, just try to get her a bunch of turns in, and then she's gonna rock a lot of damage. So I think this unit is absolutely underrated, but that might also be me not having the unit and thinking a unit is good, so that could be a thing. Let's actually one down her for that reason, but I think she's good for RTA. Siege offense, I could see a few siege offenses where, or arena offense, siege offense, I could see a few where she would do good as well. So I'm gonna give that an 80. Most of the time, you just want to build it. If for RT, I would say Vio will. For the normal siege arena hits, I would say go for Swift. Then we have Hilda, or the Dark Gen, which I personally don't like a lot at all. The main thing is she has like the stun that keeps being casted if she doesn't get hit throughout all of the turns of the enemy. AK, you have to land all of your stuns or you have to proc. Yeah, that's just like, I have to sack, otherwise this unit doesn't do shit. Plus, if you play against a Juno, or there's actually with all of the Zenitsus right now ignoring the stuns, with the Fire Monkey ignoring the stuns, there's a bunch of units that just ignore the stuns. That just doesn't make her that great. So I'm just gonna put her at like 60. Then we have the Light Triss, which is an absolute uniqueness best in slot for arena offense. But she's only good for arena offense. But if I had her, I would absolutely use that arena offense. And that is the Dot team. But this Dot team does actually hard counter Junos as well, which just makes things so much better for the Dot team in the first place. Team would be her plus a Rika plus a Heigang plus, I would say, Trix still. You could also go for a Seth, or you could go for something else. There's a few options that you could go in the fourth. No, actually I would go Nora. So I would go Triss, Nora, Heigang, and Rika. And that is just absolutely insane. That's just way too freaking good. If she moves in front of the other units, you could maybe also use a Wedjat, because you can just use the skill 2 to have the cleanse, removal, harmful effect thingy on a Camilla. But I think a Rika would still do a better job. But I think she's really nice for that, but she's only nice for that. But since she's that good for that, she gets an 80 for me. Then we have the Dark one, which is an okay-ish nuker. Doesn't do that much damage. Like, her ignore defense isn't super high, so that's kind of an issue. And she kind of wants to be paired with, like, let's say a Nephthys or Maximilian, which is a little bit too much to ask for her. Which just kind of makes her bad. She is a good pair with a Dark Tanjiro, however, because Dark Tanjiro already lands 2 debuffs. She has the 100% ignore defense. Or the 100% ignore defense. So, but then again, don't like it that much. For the build of this thing, 15 crit rate, and then just tanky stats, high accuracy, high resistance. For this thing, just typical nuker set, rage, swift, whatever. Crit damage in the 4, attack in the 6. Light Hacker, Silver, really good unit for, I would say arena defense is not that bad. It might be better in some cases than a Vanessa, but I would still go for the annoying stats of or like multiple shield sets on it, so you're not like fooled by Leo Lucifer. And it's really good for RTA. It's definitely a really nice unit for RTA. You just have to be careful against Junos and Pheromones because they like to eat the debuffs from this thing. But it also does provide immunity, and it's a nice way where the enemy could look in like Oliver and the Vanessa, and you're like, shit, but now I cannot speed contest. You slap in this thing, which is just a really insane option that your box has when you have this unit. So Silver's gonna get an 85 for me in that one. Most cases built on Vio, just moving right after your AoE strips. And I would say that he's best in a set where he's also high on accuracy and high tanky. Dark Hacker, Nyx, but Nyx with a 1. I think he's really good in arena defense, because the moment that anything lands 2 debuffs, so let's say anyone is using like a Nephthys or something like that, the silence won't land because the silence comes later. Therefore, the Nyx will make it that all of the damage is reduced, which is really good. Plus, he is an insane good late pick in RTA. Like, if someone goes the Layla Tomoe Heigang comp and they play against Nyx, they deal no damage. If they go some kind of like anything that has a few debuffs, you just lower the damage output by so much. So this thing is legit one of the highest ban rate units out there. Really good for RTA, really good for arena defense. Maybe you can use it somewhere in siege offense, but then there's probably better options out there. But I would definitely say 85 for Nyx over there. Then we have Sukuna, and Sukuna doesn't have a passive. That is the main thing. If the skill 1 and skill 2 of Sukuna, I prefer the Hayato. If you haven't seen the skills on Hayato, that one actually looks better, which is the Summoners War original one. But if they give this thing a passive, he does have the armor break on the skill 2 with a decent rate. He would definitely be good, but he just legit has no passive, therefore he's not good. Dark Itadori also has the issue where he wants to be Han, but he's not really Han because he doesn't land armor breaks. He does have the multi-hits. He does have like that endure if he hits enough and lowers his cooldown if he did do enough damage, but he just doesn't provide enough damage, needs way too much setup, is not really that great. Light Nobara is also really not that great of a unit. It's like a fake Molong with no damage. It's just, no. It's one of those units that you can kind of try to make it work, but it's really not that great. Dark Megami, however, is a pretty good unit. You have some cleaves in arena offense because it is a loaded kit with a strip, double pushback, and an armor break, which is definitely loaded right there. However, issue is low base speed, does have to land everything. If he doesn't land everything, it's kind of shit. But I can definitely see some value for arena offenses, maybe even siege offenses. Maybe I would say use a secondary stripper before that. Or use him as secondary stripper and more have for like the pushbacks and the armor breaks or something like that. RTA, you need a very specific comp all around him to actually make him good. But I think he has potential to be pretty strong. So I'm going to give 85 to the Megami. Light Gojo, I think, is pretty underrated. I think Light Gojo is pretty legit. I would say only RTA wouldn't really use him Siege and Arena. But in here, I think he is pretty nice. He has an AoE strip. You're probably going to build him faster than the rest of your team. But let's say that you cannot do the AoE strip because you have to cleanse something. He also can do that. Plus on the Despair set. Plus his base speed is like, what, 106 or something? Yeah, 106 base speed. That is very easy for Despair units to get into. Only big issue he has is that the skill 1 is attack scaling, where the skill 2 and skill 3 are defense scaling, which does make it a little bit worse. So yeah, the skill 1 is just useless turns, but I think in general he's pretty nice. And he also does provide the speed lead, so I would give him that. I would definitely build him on Despair and then probably speed, defense, HP, high accuracy, or the other way around, or double defense, double HP, something along those lines. Dark Gojo is legit one of the better units right now. Because Dark Gojo for inter-server defense, I would say is probably a best in slot. For arena defense, it is also a really insane unit. For RTA, it's mostly a must ban. Sure, he could miss, but mostly is a must ban. But yeah, he's just really good for a lot of those defense things out there. I would even say siege offense. You could probably use it for like a bruiser fight if you like the bruiser in siege offense. But Dark Gojo is absolutely insane for those defense things. Because you just go Finesse Triton and then make the Gojo fast enough to move after a Triton. If they go for any kind of like Leo team or any kind of bruiser team with anything, Gojo just fucks that up. Gojo also gives the stun. That just fucks things up. Gojo also has the defense chance of RNG armor breaking on the S2. That's just so nice. So Gojo has a lot of defense value and very high defense value on that. Plus in RTA as a late pick, it's often one of those like, okay, he does have the double AoE strip already. If I let the Gojo through, I have like a ragdoll, I have a gap, so I have those. None of those things are going to have any passives. I'm fucked. I gotta ban it. So Dark Gojo gets a 95 from me for that. How to build it? I would say in most cases Fio, and I would probably go crit rate on the 4 and then attack or HP on the 6. Kind of depends like how tanky or how much damage you want to do on him. But he could eat a lot of stats, like so he needs good runes to actually shine, I would say. Then we have the Light Draken Warrior, which I think is Freedon, something like that. Freedrion. Okay. This is the one that if you apply the same debuff twice, then he starts reflecting them or some weird shit. Yeah, it takes way too long. Kind of garbage. That's just one of those things, though. Then we have the other one, which is Draken itself. Drakar. Drakar has this skill, the Duel of Honor, and then he loses to a freaking 3-star Sylphid or whatever. We have seen Serpent. Serpent I've seen him lose against. Monkeys he loses against. He loses too many 1v1 duels, and it just makes him kind of weak. So I think he should not be able to get any debuffs in his 1v1 duel, and that will make him better. Plus, he also has Resistance Awakening. Resistance Awakening. So yeah, if they remove those kind of things and they make him a little bit better, he's potential to be very good with a small buff. But currently, it's just way too hard to make it work. Light Tanjiro, for those that we have next, the next 4 is a little bit harder for me to decide because I haven't seen them used that much yet. Light Tanjiro is the one with the AoE branding, and then he has a chance to heal more. And he also has the ignore defense on the S2, but the ignore defense on the S2 is not that much. Like compared to a Destiny, Destiny has a 350 multiplier, and this thing has a 320. And also Destiny has more base attack, so it does do a little bit more on that. But I think it could be an okay-ish bruiser unit, kind of niche scenarios. But I don't think it is insanely good. So I'm going to give that a 75 for now. And that's mainly just, I'm not really sure about the unit, but something like that. Also for build, I would probably say you have to go speed, damage, attack. But then the healing doesn't help you that much for bruisering. I'm not 100% sure about it. Dark Nezuko, I think, is super legit. Dark Nezuko is pretty much like Sigrid, but so much better. Where Sigrid is just full on like, okay, we're going to do damage, let's go. Dark Nezuko is a lot of cleanses, immunity for a long time. She has like, what, 3-turn immunity or something? Her immunity is super long. She did already get nerfed because apparently her cooldown, or this skill was lowering the cooldown on it itself. But yeah, immunity for 3 turns, which is really nice. Also, most of the time you place the immunity and cleanse the units that are hit. So that is also where the team up for other units is often random. Her team up is most likely on the thing that has been hit before. So therefore it's a high value target. So therefore the team up makes sense on a high value target to team up with that high value target. So that just makes so much sense. The skill 1 is pretty weak because it's not HP scaling, whereas the S2 is HP scaling. But the S2 does have a form of attack bar reduce, and then also attack bar increase, and you stun something with a pretty decent rate. Like it's a 3x45 check to do that, which is definitely not bad at all. So I think she's pretty loaded. I would say for RTA, it's mainly good. Siege offense, I could see some creative siege offenses that make it work. Siege defense, not too sure about yet. Arena defense, offense, probably not. So I'm going to one down her for that because she's also kind of unknown-ish yet. But I think for RTA, she's really, really legit. Like, you can make a lot of pairs with RTA. And also just the simple thing is, like, if you team up with a Sonya, Sonya will have lower cooldowns on the next turn, which just helps out so much more. She's like a Siren, but, like, way better in protection that way. So definitely do like her kit a lot. It's just that for defense-wise, she's maybe not that crazy. But she definitely has potential to be really good if you see, like, better pairs with her and people got more used to how to play her. So she might be in here. It's just that their skill 1 is kind of holding it back. Like, the skill 1, the scaling is not that great. And just an attack break, what she has on that with a low rate. I don't know. She does have multi-hits on it, though. And this also has multi-hits. Ooh. Nope, I'm gonna one her up because she can also put additional damage artifacts on her to actually stack damage while being tanky. She gets a 90 from me. I'm pretty sure people figure out at some point that she's fucking insane. Dark Zenitsu. I think he's one of the worst of the Zenitsu family, whereas the whole Zenitsu family is pretty legit because of the speed scaling and stuff. However, he provides dots the moment that he crits, which is the weakest one of the passives, and the passive is the only thing that kind of changed between all of them. So I think he's okay-ish because of not having elemental disadvantages. But I don't think it does that much. I'm going to give him a 75 for now. It's more of a bruiser unit, like into a heavy stunning team. He might be decent in that. Especially if they don't have any form of cleanses or any form of healing. He might be one of those that could add in a little bit more than some of his counterparts. But it's rough to say. I would say 75. Then we have the Inosuke Light. And I think he's very legit on the skill 3. Absolutely loaded skill 3. Armor breaks, pushbacks, and a cooldown increase, which is pretty much everything that Maximilian wants to do, but better. Only issue is, Maximilian has a pretty good skill 2 and pretty decent skill 1. This thing has a pretty garbage skill 2 and garbage skill 3. But I think for the skill 3 alone, I still do want to give it some value, because the pushback where Maximilian has a pushback of like 25%, this has a 75%. Plus increase cooltime. So you're pretty much denying a turn and a half or even more. And you're also providing the death break. So the turn denial on this one makes it a little bit better. The only issue is like, okay, do you actually land it fully? But I could definitely see this being used for a siege offense where you go for Tiana, this thing, plus some kind of damage dealer afterwards. It's like you either push back, or you increase your cooltime, or you armor break, or all three, right? So that's pretty loaded for a siege offense. Arena offense could see some use here and there as well. RTA, definitely something in the late pick could be nice for RTA. So I think overall this is pretty solid unit. Plus, this is something that you could use in TOA as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a buff on his skill 1 and skill 2, because the rest of his family, he's by far in the weakest family. And if they start buffing the skill 1 and skill 2 on the others to just buff those, then they have to buff the light 1 as well, because the skill 1 and skill 2 just don't do that much. But if they buff the skill 1 and skill 2 on any of the others, they will buff it for him as well, and they just instantly make him really good. So I'll get that 85 as well. Then we have the Spectre Princesses. To be honest, the light one I've never seen being used. That's that one that gives A to B on being like granted harmful effects, get A to B. I don't think this is used that much. It's being used maybe niche-ish, whatever. It's not really that great. But then we have Valeska, which is the dark one, which is actually really freaking strong. I think she's insane for arena defense. I think she's very usable in siege offense. I would say for arena offense in a slow clear team, she can probably do a thing or two as well, because she's just, in the end, she's kind of Skogul for her damage, because she does the full amount of damage of that her HP is spread out towards the amount of enemies that there is. So in siege, definitely usable, but in RTA as well, because she gets a turn the moment things die, and that part just makes her so much better. Her cooldowns are not that long. If you put her on Vio, it's just very short in the first place. I've seen a lot of people go, yeah, she does have resistance, so 100 res is easy to get. High HP, high speed. And then it's just every time that you have the max stacks, just do the sacrifice. You get a lot of turns on her. I think she's absolutely really great. And I think 90, maybe even 95, that she is worth it, because I think she's really, really darn strong. Yeah, I think I'll actually put her on 95, because siege offense, she's really strong. Arena offense, I could see her being used for like a slow clear team. RTA, she's really strong, and then also arena defense, because this unit on defense, if the enemy doesn't full kill the Valeska, she takes a turn because something died. She just one-taps Lucian, she one-taps Talisman, she one-taps Grogan, she one-taps all of that shit. So I definitely do think that it is a very nice combination of something to use. Plus, the moment that they go Bruiser against it, they have to focus her first, which wastes a lot of time because she's also super freaking tanky. So yeah, I do think that she's insanely good. So this is the list of all of the LDs right now. Let's see compared to last time around. I had the Tianlang higher, I had the Nikki higher, Asima and Maxi higher. Okay, a few changes in there, but I think a lot of things are still kind of similar. Ivor was lower before, but I think Ivor actually does fit this spot by being that good in all three of those things. And I would say even for siege offense, like if you like to bruise in siege offense, you could actually use it. Arena offense wouldn't recommend that, but yeah, that's a very nice way to use all of those. So this is going to be the tier list for all of the LD units. We're 2 hours and 16 minutes in, which is once again a pretty long time. That's as long as that the normal elemental tier list thingy did, which was posted yesterday. If you haven't seen it yet, link is in the description down below as well. Hope you enjoyed these videos, and there will be a tier list on all of the normal net 4s, all of the LD 4s, and all of the 2As as well. And then I'm also going to be making a tier list which include all of the LD 5s, but then in a way written as what is my most wanted and what do I already have and those kind of things. So I'm going to be making a tier list on that one as well, which is going to be more of like a loose, funny one. And this is more of like an educational explaining where to use, how to use, when to use, and how good they are, in my opinion. Guys, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Trying to hit that 50k subscribers somewhere within the next few weeks. So, guys, hope you can help well with that, and see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.